of Britain's economic difficulties when she addresses Parliament later. We will, of course, bring that to you here on GB News. But the Tories say she's trying to con the British public so that she can raise taxes. No tax rises are expected to be announced today, though, but it's understood the Chancellor will ask the Office for Budget Responsibility to carry out a full assessment of the public purse. Those hoping to lead the Conservative Party have just until this afternoon to throw their hat into the ring. Former Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch became the 6th Tory to join the race at the weekend, promising to refocus the party on Britain's sovereignty and revive confidence in capitalism, she says. Well, it comes after Suella Braverman ruled herself out of the race, saying there's little point in her standing because the party's branded her, she says, mad, bad and dangerous. Her predecessor in the Home Office, Priti Patel, is also standing with the backing of Devon and Cornwall's Police and Crime Commissioner, Alison Hernandez.
You take Priti anywhere, people want to talk to her, they recognise her. She stands for something I think people believe in, which is that unity element. She is someone who is a no-nonsense but absolute compassionate Conservative. And I think for me, we are supposed to be the party of law and order, and someone who's got a real understanding of law and order should be someone who takes us to the next stage.
One of the UK's top GPs is warning that planned strikes would bring the NHS to a standstill. The British Medical Association's ballot of its members closes later today. Dr Katie Bramall-Stainer doesn't think there'll be a full walkout, though, but is suggesting it could see GPs stop doing some kinds of work that sits outside of their contracts, which would have severe consequences. The government insists contingencies, are being planned for every eventuality to keep patients safe. And just a recap of that breaking news we heard at the top of the hour, that Just Stop Oil protesters have used suitcases with lock-on devices to block departure gates at Gatwick Airport. The activists, as you can see here if you're watching on TV, were arrested a short time ago after entering the south terminal of Gatwick Airport, sitting in front of security scanners as passengers tried to walk past. The group says it's taking what it calls the proportionate action necessary as part of summer disruption plans to generate political pressure that it says is needed to stop the use of future fossil fuels. Gatwick says its terminals remain open and are operating normally. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Much more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Britain's Newsroom. We are back. We've been on our holidays, not together. That maybe doesn't need pointing out. This is, of course, Britain's Newsroom with me and Andrew. Have you had a nice holiday?
I have. Very nice.
Good.
Nice to be back. And I've come back and it's summer. The sun is shining. Wow.
Yeah.
That's like something.
And the Olympics have started. OK, so we'd love to know what you think this morning of the Olympic opening ceremony. I was watching it aghast. I'm sure you were as well. Well,
I mean, I made a joke with Eamon Holmes, but it's not funny, really. Is it still going on? It went on and on and on and on. It was meaningless. If you're going to have an Olympic opening ceremony, you need a focus. That's called the stadium. But having it disparate all over Paris, a stupid, childish, offensive drag show, the Olympic flag upside down. Celine Dion was apparently very good, but I'd passed out by then.
I think it's partly as well, for me, what is the Olympics? So the motto of the Olympics is faster, higher, stronger. Yeah. And that opening ceremony was just fatter, weirder, stranger, because you've got these athletes who represent brilliance. They're just amazing at what they do.
Peak of their powers.
And then you've got a bunch of weirdos, frankly, who are normalising obesity, completely at odds to the physical specimens which are competing in the sport. You've got this idea that gender doesn't matter anymore. There's no such thing as a man and a woman. Let's just all be one amorphous mass of they and thems. It was utterly depraved, actually. And to satirise that Last Supper...
We're just beyond, and they've apologised for that now. Would they have satirised a similar event in the Muslim calendar? No.
No.
They would not. In a city like Paris, which has had all sorts of race riots, it was the final straw for me, really. And it was just so long, and you could see that pathetic, ridiculous, pompous, preening Paycott Macron. It was down to him.
There was a man, I think, in hot pants, with his testicle hanging out.
Well, yes, what was that about?
And OK, you might say it was a wardrobe malfunction. Possibly, possibly not.
I doubt
but
it.
There were children. There were children in that scene of sort of... like I say, I genuinely think it was a sort of sexual depravity. I know I've gone a bit Mary Whitehouse here this morning. Didn't take long, did it?
Well, but that fits in with the presence, talking of sexual depravity, in the Olympics of the Dutch beach volleyball player. He is a rapist.
Stephen van der Velde, this is.
So he, in 2014, came to Britain, age 19, raped over 2 days, 3 times, a 12-year-old British girl. He was jailed in 2016 for 4 years. He served 1 year here, then went to Holland. Of course, Holland, with its very relaxed Darling view to incarceration, he didn't serve any more time in prison. I'm sorry, I know it's the prisons is about redemption and but he's on the...
he's on the sex offenders register.
For at least 15 years. So if he's on the sex offenders register, he's on there because he's perceived to be a potential danger. What is he doing? Flying flag for king and country, as it is in Holland, or is it the Queen in Holland? I can't remember. They've got a Queen at the moment. I think it's shameful, Bev.
I see this quite differently, actually, to you, because the story being that when he was 19, clearly a very immature 19...
But an adult.
An adult, but a teenager.
An adult.
True, but a teen, and he met a 12-year-old online that he didn't know was 12, he thought she was 16. They established this relationship. This is just the facts, it's not my opinion. They established a relationship. He flew over to Luton to visit her. They spent a few days together, consensually spending time together. He didn't hold this girl captive. She obviously was in all sorts of who knows what sort of psychological and emotional dysfunction. But she can't consent to have sex at 12 years old.
No,
she confessed to him that she was 12. He knew that, and he had sex with her. Which
3 times.
Horrific. For that, he spent time in prison because he told her to go and get a morning after pill when he'd gone back to the Netherlands.
And that's how the authorities found
And
him.
at the clinic, they said, "How old are you, dear?" And she said, "I'm 12. And therefore, there was a knock on his door, he was arrested, and he spent time in prison. Now, I would say 10 years ago, he has come out and he's turned his life around via sport. And I think for men particularly, sport can be the most fantastic way of turning your life around. And if we're saying that he shouldn't compete, then you're holding sports people to different standards. And that is a conversation to be had.
Well, and you say I would, because the Olympics, as you just said earlier, these are people at the peak of their powers. They are representing their country, king and country, president and country. They are on parade. They are supposed to be the finest and the best. And he is a rapist. He's a convicted rapist. The fact that the morning after, when she went to get a morning after pill, they said instantly, "How old are you?" They knew she was underage. He knew the moment he saw her, she wasn't 16.
No, she told him. Yeah. He knew that she was under 16.
And he
Absolutely.
was 19. And she was 12. She's a child, Bev, at 12. She's a child.
Then, I mean, look, this situation is... She is. But this situation is incredibly rare in that how often do former or rapists, convicted rapists, go on to represent their country at sport? There will be other people who have criminal records who go on to represent their country at sport. Maybe there's a conversation to be had in terms of the punitive system. If you commit a certain type of crime, what should you not be able to do? Represent your country at sport. Yeah. Maybe what?
Definitely.
Be in a band, be an actor.
No.
What are the jobs we're saying they can't do? It's his job.
What happens if he gets a gold medal and they put him on the podium with the national anthem playing? What is the crowd in the stadium going to do? Cheer? Clap warmly? A rapist? No. If he'd done his fifth... Look, you know, in the law here, if the conviction is spent after a certain period of time, it is certainly not spent when he was convicted in 2016 in 8 years. I'm sorry, it's too soon.
Then I think that needs to be a different conversation about if you commit crime, should you be able to represent your country at sport? Because otherwise, there will be... this is his job. That's how you look at it. This is how he makes his money. So that's like saying if you're an accountant and you rape someone, you can't ever then be an accountant. It's the same thing.
No,
it means that we're holding sports people to a different level of standard.
I am, because it's Olympics. But also, I said there should be a time period, but he's not. That's not elapsed. He's on the sexual offenders register for a minimum of 15 years. Yeah. This offence took place not that many years ago.
10 years ago.
And I'm sorry, if he wins a gold medal, imagine it.
He's married now. He has a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
We don't know who the victim was.
And we know how problematic this is for the Olympic authorities, because he's not allowed to be in the Olympic Village. He's being treated differently again because he is different, because he's a rapist.
I'm not sure. I don't think he's. It's not that he's. Is it that he's not allowed to stay in the Olympic Village?
He's not in the Olympic Village.
Have they decided?
It's probably because they. Well, I think for public.
His own sake.
Yeah.
That he shouldn't be in the Olympic Village.
And of course, there've been protests and demonstrations. What do you think?
Yeah,
I mean,
let's know what you
it's
think.
An interesting point. And I do believe in the power of sport to rehabilitate, but I think this is too soon. And I wonder what the family of that 12-year-old girl think.
Well, we don't know, do we? But it is a really interesting talking point. I have to say, I feel that, like I say, he should be allowed to compete. That is how it stands in the law.
God help us if the rapist gets the gold.
Right. Chancellor Rachel Reeves will today deliver her first major speech in the role, and she'll confirm a £20 billion black hole in public spending.
So how do you think the government is going to plug the gap? And also, before we talk to Adam Cherry, our GBNews reporter, she is affecting surprise. Oh, she didn't know about this, even though we're talking to him later and we're delighted. Paul Johnson from the Institute of Fiscal Studies said both major political parties are in denial because there is a, quotes, and he used the figure, £20 billion black hole. Well,
Rachel Reeves is talking this afternoon to tell us how she's going to fix this problem. But let's talk now to GBNews reporter Adam Cherry. Good morning, Adam. What do we know about how Rachel Reeves wants to plug this gap?
Well, we're not expecting specific tax measures today. Instead, we'll get the first part of this equation, which is the spending side of things. So what we're going to hear today is some spending cuts, or what they, in political terms, call efficiencies. So we'll see a reduction in external consultants. There's a lot of those swimming around Whitehall and in the civil service. They'll be pared back. Some infrastructure spending, for example, the rail line for the HS2 all the way to Euston, that's going to be shortened again. So that'll be pared back. Things like that. So infrastructure, but that's all tinkering, to be honest. The real pain, and that's actually the purpose of today's statement, is coming in the autumn, when we'll see some serious tax rises on the likes of capital gains tax and inheritance tax. Today, it's just shifting the blame on the previous government, whilst they still have enough goodwill and political capital from the election to make these choices. So we'll hear when the budget will be announced. It will be sometime in the autumn, and they'll set a date for that today. We will, of course, see some public sector pay rises today. That is one decision that will be made today, 5.5% above inflation for NHS workers and teachers. So a lot to come, but really today is all about blaming the last guys for some painful decisions you're going to make in a few months' time.
All right, Adam, that's Adam Cherry, and of course we'll have more on that, and we are talking to Paul Johnson from the Institute of Fiscal Studies, who is to be honest, he is the seer, the sage of all public finances, to see whether Labour are protesting too much about the scale of the £20 billion black hole.
One of the things the Chancellor said she might do is sell off some empty government buildings.
That
sounds quite sensible to me.
Yeah, but I've heard it all before.
Yeah, I'm sure. Right, up next, find out where a radical Muslim cleric plans to buy a small island in the UK to turn it into an Islamic homeland for all believers, his quote. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
This is his private army.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark Meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Should Prince Harry have accepted an award named after a US war hero at a glitzy ceremony last night? People begged him not to, but he did it anyway. It's time for tonight's head-to-head. Well, Prince Harry paid tribute to the eternal bond between mother and son as he appeared alongside his wife, Meghan Markle, at the glitzy ESPY Awards, dubbed the Sporting Oscars last night. The Duke accepted the Pat Tillman Award, named after a US war hero, for his Invictus Games work. But Harry's decision to accept the award was shrouded in controversy after more than 76,000 people signed a petition demanding he reverse his decision. Well, speaking last night, Harry paid tribute to Pat Tillman's mother, Mary. But that comes after Mary Tillman slammed his decision to give Prince Harry the gong, saying, "I am shocked as to why they would select such a controversial and divisive individual to receive the award. There are recipients that are far more fitting. These individuals do not have the money, resources, connections or privilege that Prince Harry has." So tonight I'm asking, should Harry have actually accepted the award? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at GBNews and make sure you take part in our poll. But going head-to-head on this now, a former royal butler, Grant Harold, and the journalist and broadcaster, Laurie Turner. Thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Laurie, I will start with you. I mean, the mother didn't want Harry to have it, but he did it anyway. What do you think?
I just think it's incredibly tone deaf. He seems to have an amazing ability to not read the room. It wasn't like this was a surprise because the opposition to him getting this award had been growing. So he had the chance to say, actually, I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to accept the award, but he didn't.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Oh, I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. It's 9:49. Now, a controversial Muslim cleric is raising funds to buy a remote Scottish island and turn it into his own Islamic state, where Sharia law would be practised.
So he's called Sheikh Yasser Al Habib. He's already raised £3 million for the purchase. The owner of Torsa, which is just off the west coast of Scotland, says he won't sell it to him. But what if he offers a fatter price?
Quite. Well, joining us now is former Labour MP Khalid Mahmood, friend of the show. Morning, Khalid. Thank you so much for joining us. Right, give us a bit of background to this guy. Who is Sheikh Yasser Al Habib?
Well, he's run away from Kuwait, where he was originally born, and the Kuwaiti authorities are still after him. And we gave him asylum here in the UK. He's in Beaconsfield, I believe. That's where he's stationed at the moment. Where he has a huge following. And basically, he's a sectarian sort of scholar, if you can call him that. But what he does generally is creates a huge amount of division between the Shia community, which he purports to be of, against the majority of the Sunni community. And the things that you show, the photographs, the images that you're showing at the moment, wouldn't be allowed for any other organisation in the UK. And I'm just surprised and shocked that they're still allowing this to continue. I've called for him, for his stations to be closed down over the last 10 years in the way that he divides just the Muslim community alone itself, let alone the damage he will do to the UK.
Khalid, just in case people are listening on the radio, the images we can see is what effectively looks like Sheikh Yasser Al Habib's private army.
That's right. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that the authorities in the UK are allowing this to happen. If that was any other Muslim organisation or a right-wing organisation doing this, the police will have been there, CTU will be in there, the counter-terrorism unit would be in there, and this guy would be taken to task. Yet I don't know why we're just allowing this to continue. And I would certainly call on the Home Office to get a grip of this and resolve this.
And Khalid, just before, if he is to buy this island, and the owner says at the moment he can't, but if the price is right, who knows? Can he create a Sharia law state on an island? Is that permissible within British law? It's a Scottish island. I know there's a Scottish Parliament, but I'm sure that would be something that would come under the Westminster Parliament. Can you explain how that could or couldn't work?
Well, it couldn't work. Basically, it's still under British law as far as all of that is concerned. And he just can't have an exclusive place in the UK where all other communities are banned from. He says this is open to all Muslims. But if you look at the rhetoric that he has to the majority Muslim Shia community across the world, it is totally derogatory and in sometimes abusive. And so this guy has no interest in allowing this open and transparent place to be set up here. And to have a military activity on an island like this, you don't know who's coming in, you don't know who's coming in. If it was to set up a small airstrip, what would go in and what would go on? It's absolutely ridiculous that we would even consider allowing this, whether the owner wants to sell it or not.
Just speculate for us then, Khalid, about the worst case scenario here. If this guy is able to raise funds, he's already raised 3 million quid. We don't know what the owner of the island wants. If he does raise that money and he is allowed to act with a sort of impunity, which you're saying is he already does act with impunity in this country, what's the worst case scenario?
Well, the worst case scenario is he's had his paramilitary set up already. He will then be able to move across, perhaps not in uniform with these people, and carry out whatever he feels that is important to his organisation. And then we're going to have the police and the security services running around trying to protect people from him. He has made his views very, very clear how opposed he is to the philosophy of the Sunni community. And to be honest with you, serious people in the Shia community don't recognise him either. So he's just completely off the peg, and he just goes off into these rants. And we should look at the way the people that we host in this country. And I'm really surprised that we still haven't taken any action on this.
Yeah. OK, Khalid, lovely to see you, as usual. Right, that's just extraordinary.
Why did we give him asylum in this country in the first place? Here we go again.
Let us know your thoughts this morning. Oh, it's nice to be back, isn't it? Lots to talk about.
Yeah.
Still to come, Reform MP Richard Tice will give us his take on the violence at Manchester Airport. Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Plenty of sunshine across much of the UK, turning increasingly hot over the next couple of days, particularly across England and Wales. And you can see a cloudier start across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland first thing this morning. A weak weather front is producing some rain across the far northwest, largely the Western Isles, but also fringing western coasts into the afternoon. But plenty of sunshine for the vast majority of the UK, perhaps an isolated shower across northern England, southern Scotland, but temperatures rising in that sunshine, 25 to 29 Celsius towards the southeast, low 20s further north and west. Through this evening time, this weather front does just push a little further eastwards, bringing some patchy light rain largely to the Highlands and Islands. Further east, still sunshine holding on there across eastern Scotland. Cloud also encroaching much of Northern Ireland, some patchy rain across the west, slowly spreading eastwards. England and Wales, though, a fine end to Monday. Plenty of sunshine, temperatures still holding up the mid to high 20s, so great for an evening walk. And then overnight, this weather front just slowly pushes its way southeastwards, loses most of its so just becomes an area of cloud. Some patchy light rain and drizzle perhaps over the highest ground. Most places dry overnight, prolonged clear spells, but this will still mean temperatures holding up generally in the mid to low double figures. So a warm start to Tuesday, plenty of sunshine across England and Wales. The remnants of this weather front perhaps just giving a little more cloud across parts of northern England later, parts of Wales. Northern Ireland also clouding over through Tuesday, perhaps 1-2 splashes of rain possible. Scotland also bright and sunny. In the sunshine, temperatures rising for many of us, again approaching the high 20s, close to 30 Celsius in the southeast.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Cumbria, the A66 is blocked westbound by an accident at Appleby in Westmoreland, causing delays. The M62 in West Yorkshire is partly blocked westbound when there are animals on the motorway, just after junction 23 at Huddersfield, causing queues. In Derbyshire, the A61 is very busy southbound after a breakdown between the A632 Hollis Lane and Hornsbridge roundabout at Chesterfield. Train services in Norfolk are suspended between Acle and Lingwood, departing via Reedham because of an obstruction on the line. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, the inside lane's closed southbound where a car's broken down just after junction 11. The A505 loop and Dunstable turn with queues from Toddington services. Gatwick Express services are suspended because of a signalling problem. There are delays of up to an hour to DFDS sailings at Dover. And on the Isle of Wight, Eleanor's Grove Fishbourne is closed because of an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
You really could become the next big Great British Giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
On the day that I got the money in the bank account, everything just seemed a lot sunnier.
But I do have something to spend it on.
Just go for it. It's an absolute must.
Thank you, GBNews.
Amazing feeling to win.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10 o'clock on Monday the 29th of July, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce.
So, are they threatening tax rises? We'll find out soon. The Chancellor will reveal this afternoon the scale of the black hole in our public finances, claiming, apparently, she knew anything about it before the general election.
Yes, at 3:30 p.m. this afternoon, it'll all become clear. £20 billion. How is this going to be paid for? Well, today it starts with some spending cuts and some serious choices for the next few months.
And GPs are threatening to walk out. Family doctors are voting on whether to strike for the first time in 60 years. Can you get a GP appointment? And would paying the doctors more make any difference?
Those wretched Just Stop Oil activists are at it again. This time they're blocking the departure gates at Gatwick Airport this morning. Does this type of action make you more sympathetic to their cause, or, for me and Bev, infuriate you even more?
And as the dust settles after the election defeat, the race is now on for a new Conservative leader. It's Braverman out, Badenoch on the attack. She says she's going to fight for the top job.
I said to my mates who are in the senior Tory MPs, don't bother. Nobody's listening.
What about who's going to be leading?
No, Do it next year. I would go for a caretaker leader, somebody of the stature of David Davis, who can hold the fort for 6 months, 9 months. He's been in opposition. He knows the ropes. Not sure that he'd want the job. I talked to him about it. And have your leader maybe in a year's time, because this government has got a huge mandate. People wish them well. Yeah. I wish them well. I want them to get on with it.
It's not going to make any difference, is it? For the
no,
right?
no. And they're going. And also, aren't they brilliant? They announced the new Tory leader on November the 2nd. November the 5th, there's a little something called the American presidential election. So that's the only story in town.
Yeah, very
They're not
good
even going to get a honeymoon.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Right, gbnews.com/your say to let us know your thoughts. First, the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Bev, Andrew, thank you very much, and good morning to you. It is exactly 2 minutes past 10, and leading the news this morning, spending cuts are expected to be announced by the government today in an effort to plug a £20 billion black hole in public finances. Rachel Reeves will scrap some road and rail projects and cut public sector waste, among other measures, to rein in spending. She's also expected to accuse the Conservatives of covering up the true scale of Britain's economic difficulties when she addresses Parliament later. We will, of course, bring that to you live on GB News. But the Tories say she's trying to con the British public so that she can raise taxes. No tax rises are expected to be announced today, but it is understood the Chancellor will ask the Office for Budget Responsibility to carry out a full assessment of the public purse. Those hoping to lead the Conservative Party have until this afternoon to throw their hat into the ring. Former Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch's become the 6th Tory to join the race, promising to refocus the party on Britain's sovereignty and to revive confidence in capitalism, she says. It comes after Suella Braverman ruled herself out, saying there's little point in her standing because the party's branded her mad, bad and dangerous. Her predecessor in the Home Office, Priti Patel, is also standing with the backing of Devon and Cornwall's Police and Crime Commissioner Alison Hernandez.
You take Priti anywhere, people want to talk to her, they recognise her. She stands for something I think people believe in, which is that unity element. She is someone who is a no-nonsense but absolute compassionate Conservative. And I think for me, we are supposed to be the party of law and order, and someone who's got a real understanding of law and order should be someone who takes us to the next stage.
One of the UK's top GPs is warning today that planned strikes would bring the NHS to a standstill. The British Medical Association's ballot of its members closes later. Dr Katie Bramall-Stainer doesn't think, though, there will be a full walkout, but suggests it could see GPs stop doing some kinds of work that sits outside of their contract, which would have severe consequences. The government insists contingencies are being planned for every eventuality to keep patients safe. Meanwhile, the High Court is set to rule on the legality of the previous government's emergency ban on puberty blockers. The advocacy group Transactual and a young claimant challenged the order restricting the prescription of the medication, which suppresses the natural production of sex hormones to delay puberty. The ban was put in place by the not now shadow Health Secretary Victoria Atkins. And her Labour successor, Wes Streeting, said he was treading cautiously amid lots of fear and anxiety. The Department of Health defends the ban, though, and is calling for the case to be dismissed. Global leaders are urging Israel not to escalate tensions with Lebanon after a rocket strike killed 12 children in Golan Heights over the weekend. Israel and the US are blaming Hezbollah for the deaths, claiming the weapon was launched from a part of the region the militant group control. The Iranian-backed group, though, has denied that it was responsible. And Lebanon's foreign minister has condemned the strike, but says it shouldn't give Israel a licence to kill. Here, Just Stop Oil protesters have used suitcases with lock-on devices to block departure gates at Gatwick Airport this morning. The activists have now been arrested just a short time ago after entering the South Terminal, and as you can see there, they are sitting on the floor in front of security scanners as passengers try to make their way past. The group says it's taking what it calls the proportionate action necessary as part of its summer disruption plans to generate the political pressure it says is needed to stop the use of fossil fuels. Gatwick, though, says the terminal remains open and is operating normally. And finally, there's been an unexpected silver lining for visitors to Paris after last week's travel chaos. Tickets for the games in the French capital are now easier to get, and Hotel prices have dropped amid all of the disruption. Travel correspondent Simon Calder from The Independent told us this morning that his experience for the opening ceremony in Paris was far from what he'd expected.
It was great, but the hotel I stayed in, which was about half the price of what you normally expect to pay in the summer, they just said Paris is dead. We thought we were going to get extremely rich on this. In fact, we're losing lots of money, and it's a disaster. And that's borne out with lots and lots of people, whether they're driving taxis or running bars and restaurants. So great time to be a tourist, terrible time to be working in the tourism industry there.
Sadly, I'm working this week, so I would otherwise be going to France. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back, 10:07. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pierce.
Do tell us what you think. Send us your views. Post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/. You'll say lots of you I know are getting in touch about the debate as to whether a disgusting, in my view, convicted rapist, what's his name?
Stephen van der Velde.
Stephen van der Velde should be flying the flag for Holland in in any sport, frankly. He's taking part in the Olympics beach volleyball. I raised the point too. So, what if he wins the gold medal? And is the polite thing to do in an Olympic stadium is you clap and cheer the winner? Who wants to clap and cheer a rapist? He was only convicted 8 years ago. The conviction is not spent. Spent means the state gives so long, and then after so long, you're not exonerated, but the offence is wiped off your record. That offence is not wiped off his record. He committed the offence here. He raped a 12-year-old girl 3 times in 2 days, knowing she was 12, because she told him. And he was 19.
Again,
and he's a big lad,
just to clarify some of the facts, is that she was with him, they'd met him online, she wanted to be in that physical relationship with him. This isn't somebody that pursued somebody down a road.
You can't
she was
consent
12.
to 12.
So you can't consent to 12. I agree. It's despicable. And he has served his time. And therefore, we have to, within the rules of the law, give people the opportunity to start their lives again when they have done something wrong as a teenager, which is what he was.
Yeah, you can do that, but not in the full glare of the Olympic flame, which is all about sporting perfection.
Then that's a different conversation to have. But I think, you either say that he is a despicable example.
He is.
Or he is somebody who's turned his life around, who is now married with a child and is representing his country at sport. I wish there were more young men that got involved in sport. We wouldn't have so much crime if more young men got involved in sport. I'm looking to see your messages here. There's a lot of you also getting in touch. Here we go. Steve says, Andrew, not wanting to defend the Dutch person convicted of rape in the UK, but does this person show up in any other non-UK database? Is the Dutch law and perspective different to the UK? Are we going to police athletes from all countries, especially those who are marriages with 12-year-olds may be commonplace?
Hang on. He raped a British girl in Britain.
He did.
Over 2 days, 3 times. And so the British law, in my view, should apply, which means his conviction is not spent. So therefore, why is the Look, the Dutch want to select him, fine, but there's an International Olympic Committee which said, terribly sorry, we're not having rapists who convicted a serious rape in Britain only so many years ago, performing in the Olympic Games. Sorry, no. Come back when your conviction is spent, which is about another 5 years.
See, Lisa's saying he should never be allowed to represent his country. I really don't know how your brain is thinking on this subject. If this was your daughter, I'm very sure you wouldn't be saying what you have. It's not. That's not true, Lisa, because I also have a son, and so I can see this from both points of view. I'm not saying that he wasn't guilty. He was clearly found guilty. He clearly served 13 months in a prison.
13 months wasn't long for a 4-year sentence either.
Well, we don't know the details.
We sent him back to Holland. Look, let's kick out more foreign prisoners. I'd kick them all out.
Oh, let's do that.
There's 11,000 of them, and that would sort out the prison crisis. But he went back to Holland. Did they put him in jail? No, not in Holland. With a
he did a month in Holland.
Wow.
Well, that's okay because we weren't paying for him for that month. I'm okay with that as well. By all means, he did 12 months here. They sent him back.
13 months in prison for rape.
And he did a month there.
13 months in prison for rape.
With someone that he'd met met online and had a consensual, even though you can't consent at 12 years old, I understand that.
12.
It was wrong.
She was 12.
Of course it was, but this
not
isn't...
15 and a half.
But the law has dealt with that. My point is the law has dealt with that, and therefore he is free to turn his life around 10 years later, and that's what he's done. He's married, he has a child, and who knows what he will do. I don't think he's going to go on and win, actually. I'd rather this than him
wouldn't it?
coming out and re-offending.
It would be, imagine the embarrassment. Just hypothesise. They win the gold medal. Princess Anne is out there as a representative of the British Olympic Committee, and she has to give the prize. She'd refuse.
But that means that she would have to refuse to give a prize to anyone who was a former criminal.
A senior member of the British royal family
she will
not give that Olympic gold to a convicted rapist.
She will have
12-year-old girl in Britain.
I can promise you, she will have given medals over the last 50 years to people who have committed crimes.
She'd have to do
she
it
will
with
have done.
a peg on her nose and a blindfold.
Right. Let's move on. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is set to accuse Rishi Sunak's government of a cover-up over the dire state of the public finances when she sets out Labour's spending inheritance this afternoon.
To plug the gap, the £20 billion black hole, she's expected to announce some painful cuts, spending cuts. But are the Tories really to blame?
So joining us now is GBNews reporter Adam Cherry. Good morning, Adam. Of course, Rachel Reeves will tell us that the Tories are to blame this afternoon, won't she?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is the entire purpose of this statement. We're only 3 weeks into this government, so they have a little bit of time, a little bit of political capital to spend by saying, look, there are some serious problems here, but they're not our fault. We've only been here 10 minutes. They're the fault of the previous lot. So that's the entire purpose of this. Now, we're not going to see tax rises today specifically. That will be for the autumn statement, the budget, which will be announced today. We'll have a date for it today. But things like raises of inheritance tax, capital gains, those are expected later. Today, what we will see is some spending cuts on infrastructure projects like parts of HS2 and other rail and road projects, and things like government efficiency, which you hear often when tough decisions have to be made. It means cuts where they can get away with it as quickly as possible. You will also see a 5.5% pay rise for public sector workers, so they are opening the wallet in some places. But yeah, as you say, this really is about pretending to be shocked by the numbers and pointing the blame elsewhere before the real tough decisions, tough cuts and tax rises come in the autumn.
OK. Thanks so much. Right, let's bring in Conservative MP for Mid Buckinghamshire, Greg Smith now. Good morning, Greg.
Morning, Greg.
Good morning.
Do you feel like a rare species?
Well, look, there's only 121 of us left, but that's 121 Conservatives who are going to professionally scrutinise this government and call out where they get it wrong. But as you said, actually, slightly earlier in the programme, we do wish them well. We want them to succeed. We don't want the country to crash and burn under their government. But there's a serious job of opposition to do, and we're going to do it.
On the budget, Greg, there's no surprises there to you, to me, to most people. We know that there was a black hole because the Institute for Fiscal Studies, an independent body, said so before the election. It accused both front benches of being in denial, selling the electorate short. So even though Rachel Reeves, in my view, is going to be exaggerating, she says, I had no idea when she affects shock and horror, the fact is the Tories probably did leave a great gaping hole, even though the Institute for Fiscal Studies had identified it.
Yeah, the IFS had made some comments like that, but actually I'm not sure Rachel Reeves is going to be able to get away with simply saying, oh, we didn't see this coming, we had no idea, because actually she herself said in the Financial Times not that long ago that she was going to be the first Chancellor that couldn't hide behind saying we didn't know it was this bad when she got in, because of the OBR, because of the open book accounting that goes on in the Treasury right now. I'm sure she's going to point to one or two areas where she can say this, that or the other. But the reality is, with the open book we've got now, with the OBR, the way they publish their reports, it's just impossible to say we don't know what the state of the public finances are. And what we do know from other stats is that compared to most other comparative countries, certainly within the G7, whilst it's modest, we do have the fastest growth of all of those.
Greg, let's talk about Tory leadership battle, if we can get you to wade into that, if you wouldn't mind. Is the timing right for this? Andrew and I discussing earlier whether you should just let the dust settle on events for another few months before triggering this fight.
Well, we are in the timetable that we've got now. Actually, it is taking many more months than a normal Conservative leadership election would take. And I'd argue that the first step of our road to recovery is that period of reflection. It is that timescale that we need to take to internalise the kicking we've just had at the ballot box, but also to get on with the process of healing and coming up with a programme that hopefully can excite the British public about the Conservatives again when the next general election comes. And I point back, actually, just a few years ago, when Keir Starmer took over the leadership of the Labour Party. It probably took him 2.5 years to re-earn the right to be heard again. And so if we don't get on with it, if we don't get a new leader in place by November, and I accept the point about how close that date is to the US presidential election, then we're not starting that healing process that could take years before the British public are ready to listen to us again.
Well, there's 6 candidates declared so far, Greg. Unless you're throwing your hat in the ring, maybe it stays at 6. OK. Have you made your mind up yet who you're supporting?
Yeah, I'm supporting Priti Patel. She's someone who I've known a very long time. I think she's got the right mix of experience in government. Actually, of those that are left, one of the few of us that's actually got experience of opposition, having been in William Hague's core team back in 1997, the last time we had a crushing defeat at the ballot box. She gets opposition as much as she gets government. And she's got an appeal across all wings of the Conservative Party, because there's one thing that we've got to do before we can do anything else, and that is unite as a Conservative Party. The number of people on the doorsteps of my constituency during that general election campaign who said, we're sick to death of the infighting, we're sick to death of the factions within the Conservative Party. And to me, that signals the first thing we've got to do is come together, and Priti has that support from all wings of the Conservative Party.
Who do you think would be a close second place to her, Greg?
Well, look, we've got all manner of colleagues in this race. I'm not going to slag off any of them or attack any of them. They're all colleagues here in the House of Commons. But, you know, I suspect people like Tom Tugendhat, I suspect people like James Cleverly will poll very well in this election. But I'm out there making the positive case for Priti Patel and why I think she is the best placed of all my colleagues in this race to unite us and to re-establish us as a relevant political brand again ahead of the next general election.
What sort of chance does Kemi Badenoch have?
Well, look, everybody's got a chance. And actually, let's have a look at the way this election has been set up. The MPs aren't even going to have a say until September. So we've got the whole summer for candidates to set out their pitch across the country, to go around the whole of the United Kingdom, going to Conservative associations, meeting members, being tested before MPs even cast the first ballot to start whittling the list down in September. And even then, we're only taking it down to 4 who will be tested again at the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham in October. So this is actually an election where the membership of the Conservative Party is more relevant than ever before, and where candidates are going to be fully tested by you guys in the media, as well as by our own members, before a single ballot is cast, to even start whittling the list down to a smaller shortlist.
All right, Greg, thank you, MP for Mid-Box there, Greg Smith. I nearly said to him, if you could put a bet on, and then I realised that would be deeply inappropriate.
Yeah, Tories and betting. Not a good idea.
Right, up next, when did you last use your landline? I bet you've got one.
I have.
I bet you've got one that still, you turn it like that, don't you? And
It has got a dial.
It's got a dial?
It's not buttons. No, I like it.
I like a landline, but listen, find out in just a minute how few homes have them in Britain. Don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel. I'm joined now by Stefan Kyriasis to give us the latest on everything theatre.
So, yeah, we're going in first with Starlight Express, which is back. It's not in the West End. It's out at Wembley at the Troubadour Theatre, which is a big, almost kind of warehouse space, which suits because, as you know, have you seen the show?
Starlight Express was my first ever musical. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. I only saw it once, but I remember it being magical.
Well, this one, it's 1984 it started, and it's still running in Bochum in Germany in a huge arena. So basically what we've got, they've slightly tweaked it, and there's a little boy or little girl, depending on the cast, going to bed, obsessed with toy trains and dreaming of trains. Everybody is dressed up. To me, it looks like a cross between Tron and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I don't really think any of them look remotely like a train, but hey, the songs are Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's pop mixed with kind of cod 1950s rock and roll, some power ballads. The lyrics are politely like something out of an old speak and spell machine or something, you know. He's a steam train, they're out of date, he's being bullied by the diesel and the electric, and he falls for this carriage, the first-class carriage, new girl Pearl, and he wants to impress her, so he enters a race, and that's pretty much it. And when the races happen, all these barriers come up around where we're sitting, the lights are flashing, the music's thumping. It's utterly ridiculous, and I felt like a kind of teenager that was huffing sherbet dib-dabs off a giant block of sugar. It's so much fun, and the really crucial thing about it all is that somehow, in the middle of all of that, I just felt myself getting into the story. And when Pearl and Rusty have their little duet, I was very moved, and there's this big starlight sequence, which is the inspiration, the magical starlight that he's seeking. It's beautiful.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It is 10:23. We are very happy to be here from our holidays. We're so happy to be back. And we've got Emma Wolfe and Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser, former, with us in...
So they didn't come...
Not on holiday.
They didn't come, the Labour Party didn't come a former advisor a job?
Yeah, there was sort of vague talk, but it never quite happened, because I didn't want to leave you two.
Well,
Monday mornings wouldn't be the same.
GB News keeps you very busy. This is very true.
So are you very offended?
No.
Right, let's talk about landlines.
I'm not.
Emma.
Yeah.
You have a landline, because now only 47% of homes have them.
Although I was surprised it was that high.
Yeah.
OK, so a decade ago it was 84%. And a year ago, it was 54%. So this is dropping like a stone. People are just not bothering with landlines. But until recently, you had to still have your landline. I think the reason I have a landline somewhere, I have a box on the wall somewhere.
I got it because
you needed it for broadband.
That's why I've got mine.
Now you don't need it for broadband. I think BT have said you can have it, you can do it remotely.
Right.
So it's mostly the over 65s who have landlines still. Have you ever tried ringing your parents on a landline?
But also, you
can
keep your landline. Like we have one, as we said, that gives us our broadband, but I don't have a handset for it.
Right.
So the wiring is there, but I can't. And I miss a landline.
Do you?
I miss the clarity.
The sitting down and just
I've got one on my desk in the study.
Yeah.
And it's used very occasionally, but it's normally when you want a really private conversation where you're not going to have the mobile going wrong or the signal going wrong.
I think that's the thing, and I think with our phones we wander around. You'll be standing in the garden. You'll be doing other things. You're loading the dishwasher or something.
You're not concentrating on the call.
Landlines, you are just attached to the phone. You're sitting in the armchair, you make a cup of tea, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you remember, landlines, when you made a call, when you had to ask your mum and dad to use the phone and you could wait until 6 o'clock, make a call. and then you can make maybe one phone. You know, you actually had to pay for
Do you
phone
have friends
calls.
and family when you had to pick your 10 favourite numbers?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you get to 10, Matthew?
Oh, yeah. Can I tell our viewers this is all because I supply glasses cleaners to the team when I come on set, and I left Andrew out this morning.
And me.
He doesn't even wear glasses.
He doesn't even wear glasses.
He's still in competition that he didn't get a glasses cleaner off Matthew, and he doesn't even wear glasses. Anyway,
I used to clean my computer.
But I think there is something quite... there is something that we're losing, though, with this news of the landline.
And I feel it's similar to cash.
Privacy. Because my point as a teenager, if I wanted to make a call to my friend, I had to pull the wire into
Yeah.
Whereas kids now have absolute privacy to take that.
That's a huge thing. I remember going in the kind of hallway where there was another point, and you could unplug the phone, put it in there, and close the door, as though you couldn't be heard through the glass.
No, but my brothers and sisters would pick up the extension, and you'd suddenly hear a snort of laughter, and you'd know
you were in a family if you had
no,
an
I wasn't.
Extension?
I didn't have an extension. I said you'd pull it.
We had one on phone on the
They all had extension. I didn't have an extension. You'd have to pull the whirly thing. If you try and explain to children now why we had phones attached to the wall, it's very hard to explain to them.
This is making...
Why? Why would you do that?
This is bringing out my inner rebel, though. I want to go home and buy a handset. That I can make a landline call.
But Bev, more seriously, I think
it's... to get rid of it.
Exactly.
I think it's cutting people out. It's a bit like cash. You know, a lot of older people can't do the internet. A lot of older people can't pay online. And the death of landlines is cutting older people out of our kind of society. It's making them more isolated.
Used to be a really important part of the world.
You wouldn't go near a telephone box now.
Well, because they're...
Absolutely. If they exist, they are either used for people urinating in or for drug dealing. I mean, I don't know what phone boxes are.
We've been discussing this morning. Andrew and I feel quite differently about this. This is about this Dutch Olympic volleyball player, Matt, who was convicted of raping a child. She was 12, he was 19. 10 years ago, he served his time. Should he be allowed to play?
I think no. I agree with Andrew on this. I mean, I'll tell you what...
That's a rare event.
No, not as rare as you might think, you know. Let's have some bipartisanship. I think what's particularly upset a lot of people is that we've seen all the outrage over the drag queens and the Last Supper, yet for which the IOC has now deleted the footage from its official website.
Really?
Yeah, apparently it's been deleted. It's now been apologised, and yet you've got a child rapist appearing to represent a European country. So I think the sort of handling of the two and the world's outrage about the two are, justifiably
if the
wrong.
conviction had been spent, it hasn't, because he was only sentenced in 2016. He's got years to go.
I felt like you guys, and I read it very early this morning in the Mail, and I thought, this is an outrage. And there's poor Bob Ballard, the commentator who made a joke, and it's actually a funny joke. It's a funny...
Bob Ballard, he's a nice bloke.
Lovely bloke. It's a funny joke. I have not met a single woman who is offended by this.
Just remember what he said.
What he said was, the Australian swimming team are late. They're probably putting on their makeup. You know what women are like.
He said,
which is funny.
He was joking.
It is not even... And there are people, literally, there is a couple of female commentators saying this is outrageous.
And he's been sent home. Bob's been sent home.
People are being cancelled for opening their mouth.
And he's been commentating on swimming for decades. He's so good. He used to work for the BBC. I've known him for donkeys.
So when you juxtapose that with the fact that you've got this Dutch guy who is has an actual conviction for child rape. I'm not going to use the term that you use because I think that's a bit strong, child rapist. But
what is a child rape?
But when you put them together, it seems so out of whack.
A child rape. She was 12.
I know, but then having listened to Bev's monologue this morning, I sort of agree with her.
Yeah, but
that people need.
He was 12. She was 19.
I know.
She's a child.
He was a few years older than her. He's now grown up. Like, he would be able to carry on with his job in any other walk of life, and it's really hard when you make a mistake and you are never allowed.
Well, he wouldn't be allowed to work.
To be forgiven.
He wouldn't be allowed to work in school, etc. I mean, he wouldn't get past the vetting bit.
He's at the Olympics.
Working in a school. He's at the Olympics. Anything else? He could be a lawyer. He could be an accountant.
But the other two things are he's not allowed to stay in the Olympic Village.
No, that's not true. It's not that he's not allowed to stay there. They've decided not to put him in.
But he didn't appear at the press conference, which is a condition. Which is a condition of appearing at the Olympics, is you have to go to the press conference.
One thing's for sure, this must be a deeply uncomfortable experience for him. He's away from the other athletes. He's got his wife
spotlight. And his 2-year-old with him.
I know. I think that was what
he's turned his life around.
He has turned his life around. The fact that he's married and has a child now, and I'm not saying that child molesters don't do that, but it just feels as though he's still a young man. He's 29 years old. He did something appalling at the age of 19.
And the team admit that. The team are not making apologies.
And also 12-year-old, I know, it's really hard to because I know 12-year-olds who are sassy and act like they're 16-year-old girls.
She told him
he did know her age.
She told him he was 16 when he flew over to see her.
I know. I'm 50-50 on this. I assumed that he'd done it as a grown adult, as a grown man, and he'd groomed her.
Teenager.
I don't think that's quite the case.
He was 19, nearly 20.
Yeah,
also,
it was wrong.
When she went to get the morning after pill the next day, they said straight to her, how old are you? They could see instantly she was a child.
Yeah, but 10 years ago, they did say that to you when you went to get the morning after pill. I don't know. If I was judged for everything I did between the age of 12 and 19, I'd probably be in prison or something.
Serious rape is different.
I know, of course it is. Was it non-consent? Well, it's irrelevant.
It's the double standards, because he was convicted in a British court.
Yeah.
It's a deeply unpleasant crime for which he was convicted, for which he has served a sentence, but it's whether it's appropriate to serve at the Olympics at a time when the whole outrage was about a, you know, admittedly rather naff, part of the opening ceremony.
They spent 4 days together in this country when she was 12 and he was 19.
Which is a bit different to the way it was portrayed to me, was that he groomed her, flew over to Milton Keynes and raped her, whereas actually it sounds more like an very inappropriate holiday romance thing, which he should not have done.
No.
Anyway, on the whole, the Olympics is amazing. Can we all agree? We shouldn't be...
The Olympics are, but the ceremony was awful.
Adam Peaty was amazing last night.
And is it still going
Murray
on,
was
the
amazing
ceremony?
today. Lots more to talk about between now and midday. First, though, here's Sam, who's waiting with the news.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 10:30. The top story today. Spending cuts are expected to be announced by the government later in an effort to plug a £20 billion black hole in public finances. Rachel Reeves will scrap some road and rail projects and cut public sector waste, among other measures, to rein in spending. She'll also accuse the Conservatives of covering up the true scale of Britain's economic difficulties when she addresses Parliament later. But the Tories say she's trying to con the British public so she can raise taxes. No tax rises are expected to be announced today, though, but it is understood the Chancellor will ask the Office for Budget Responsibility to carry out a full assessment of the public purse. Those hoping to lead the Conservative Party have until this afternoon to throw their hat into the ring. Former Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch became the 6th Tory to join the race at the weekend, promising, she says, to refocus the party on Britain's sovereignty and revive confidence in capitalism. It comes after Suella Braverman's ruled herself out, saying there's little point in her standing because the party's branded her mad, bad and dangerous. Her predecessor in the Home Office, Priti Patel, is also standing, along with Mel Stride, Tom Tugendhat, James Cleverly and Robert Jenrick. In France, we now know the first arrest has been made following a series of attacks on the rail network. Local trains and Eurostar services were disrupted all weekend after signal boxes were set on fire in what's described as a coordinated sabotage. But there's been an unexpected silver lining for visitors to Paris after last week's travel chaos, with tickets for the Games now easier to get and hotel prices dropping amid the disruption. And staying with the Olympics, a commentator at the Paris Games has been sacked after making alleged sexist comments about a female swimmer. Following an Australia gold medal win in the pool, Bob Ballard, who was working for Eurosport, said, "You know what women are like, hanging around doing their makeup." His fellow presenter Lizzie Simmons immediately called his remark outrageous, and he's been removed from the lineup. And back here at home, yellow heat health warnings have been issued across most of England. Temperatures are expected to reach 30 degrees in the southeast and in London. The UK's Health Security Agency says the hot weather may have significant impacts on the NHS and social care sector. Those are the latest headlines. For now, I'm Sam Francis. Your next update at 11 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick look at the markets for you this morning. The pound will buy you $1.2807 and €1.1827. The price of gold this hour, £1,867.17 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,358 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We still haven't told you about our holidays yet. We will talk about that this morning. Similar frustrations we both suffered, and no doubt you will at home.
Sick to death of airlines.
Oh, nothing works. Or at least it's not just this country, nothing works. It doesn't work anywhere. But still to come, if you're struggling to see your family doctor, find out why it could soon become a whole lot more difficult. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Plenty of sunshine across much of the UK, turning increasingly hot over the next couple of days, particularly across England and Wales. And you can see a cloudier start across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland first thing this morning. A weak weather front is producing some rain across the far northwest, largely the Western Isles, but also fringing western coasts into the afternoon. But plenty of sunshine for the vast majority of the UK, perhaps an isolated shower across northern England, southern Scotland, but temperatures rising in that sunshine, 25 to 29 Celsius towards the southeast, low 20s further north and west. Through this evening time, this weather front does just push a little further eastwards, bringing some patchy light rain largely to the Highlands and Islands. Further east, still sunshine holding on there across eastern Scotland. Cloud also encroaching much of Northern Ireland, some patchy rain across the west, slowly spreading eastwards. England and Wales, though, a fine end to Monday. Plenty of sunshine, temperatures still holding up the mid to high 20s, so great for an evening walk. And then overnight, this weather front just slowly pushes its way southeastwards, loses most of its so it just becomes an area of cloud. Some patchy light rain and drizzle perhaps over the highest ground. Most places dry overnight, prolonged clear spells, but this will still mean temperatures holding up generally in the mid to low double figures. So a warm start to Tuesday, plenty of sunshine across England and Wales. The remnants of this weather front perhaps just giving a little more cloud across parts of northern England later, parts of Wales. Northern Ireland also clouding over through Tuesday, perhaps 1 or 2 splashes of rain possible. Scotland also bright and sunny. In the sunshine, temperatures rising for many of us, again approaching the high 20s, close to 30 Celsius in the southeast.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Cumbria, the A66 is blocked westbound by an accident at Appleby in Westmoreland, causing long delays. There are delays of up to 20 minutes to trains between Doncaster and Retford, thanks to a faulty train earlier. Trains in Norfolk aren't running between Acle and Lingwood, and diverting via Reedham because of animals on the line. In Oxfordshire, on the A34, there's a lane closed northbound just after the Botley interchange, just to the west of Oxford, after an accident with queues in the Hinksey Hill interchange. Gatwick Express train services are suspended because of a signalling problem. There are delays of up to half an hour to the FDS sailings at Dover. East Sussex, the A26 is closed at South East after an accident causing queues. There are delays of up to half an hour to trains between Southampton Central and Salisbury because of a signalling problem. On the Isle of Wight, Eleanor's Grove is closed each way between Fishbourne and Binstead after an accident. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
10:39, this is Britain's Newsroom with me and Andrew.
So this is an extraordinary story. I must say, it passed me by. Family doctors across England, we will get the outcome of the ballot at midday today on whether to take industrial action over a row over contracts for GP services.
So this will be the first walkout in 60 years. If you can't get an appointment now, well, good luck doing it if the strikes start. We're joined by health expert and commentator Thorin Gavin. Good morning, Thorin. Right, what's your position on this? Do you think the doctors, the GPs, should be striking?
So, to be truthful, as you know, I'm a practicing pharmacist, so I don't want anyone to be striking. What I want particularly is we can't. What they're looking at here is the GP contract, and they're saying it's not fit for purpose. And I think a lot of the primary care contracts are not fit for purpose. And what we really need is some joined up thinking when it comes to healthcare. So what I'm worried about with this is people are effectively, there's going to be fewer appointments available is one of the options. So they're looking at 9 forms of protest, and one of those is reducing the number of appointments available. And that will mean that some people will therefore have to go to 111 to out of hours, and they'll end up coming to the pharmacy as well. So that's where I'm worried about it. I think, we've got to think about where are people going to go if there is a reduction in the number of appointments.
So just to be clear, Thorin, it's not about their own pay, because they're on about £153,000, £154,000 a year on average, these GPs. It is the money they get to run their service, so perhaps what they pay their receptionist, how they run the surgery. And I know the pharmacy, your world in pharmacy, you also have an issue with the government about the money you're being provided for drugs. Is it all part of the same problem?
Yes, I think this is a lack of joined up thinking when it comes to healthcare, because we keep saying to everyone, we need to stay well for longer, we need to look after ourselves, we need to almost avoid going to see our GP, don't we? Because we need to do as much as we can to stay well, and therefore we need to make sure that the funding is there so that when we need to see our healthcare professionals, we want to be going into well-maintained buildings, don't we? We want to make sure that we've got what we need to do our jobs. But really, I don't think any healthcare professional wants to take part in any sort of protest or strike action. And this is very much a sort of reduction in the maybe the level of care provided in terms of appointment availability, in terms of there are some restrictions as to what GPs are allowed to prescribe, for example. So one of the proposed action is that they're going to throw that out the window and prescribe what they want to prescribe for that patient. So we could see some benefits for patients, in fact, with this. But I mean, I don't think anyone wants to have to do this, and there is actually going to be some more protests from pharmacies actually coming up in September. So people are going to be sounding the alarms in their pharmacies because they're concerned about the levels of funding. So I'm concerned generally for patients, because nobody wants to be going into an environment where your healthcare professionals are saying we need more money to do what we're doing. But also, I don't think it's just about money. We've got to think about the IT systems, how things work. I mean, even myself with the IT outage last week was an absolute nightmare just trying to navigate the system. So I really feel for patients who are also having to navigate the healthcare system, which is sometimes just a bit too complex, and it doesn't always have the common sense that it should do.
Just explain to us you mean the Microsoft meltdown, Thorin? Is that what you mean? And what was the effect for you then, practically? What happened?
Well, I don't really go and see my GP. I don't get a prescription that often, but I was unable, as a practicing pharmacist, I was unable to get my prescription last week, which actually made me much more unwell than I needed to be. And I got passed from pillar to post around 111. And as you can imagine, I knew what I needed. I knew where I needed to go, and that outage obviously meant that my electronic prescription couldn't go across to my to the pharmacy. So I think people don't. Or what's frustrating to me is I was seeing touch points in how I was accessing healthcare, which should have been should have been done differently. And I've raised that because I think it's important that we all try and improve the service in whichever way we can. But it is frustrating for patients, and I don't think. I mean, I was looking back actually. You'll remember that footage with Tony Blair with someone talking about how long for an appointment and things like that. I don't think we're anywhere near where we would like to be in terms of access to appointments. But also, it's about recognising that primary care and healthcare isn't just about the GP. There's lots of people in the GP surgeries who make wonderful things happen for patients. But also, in terms of the community as well, there's people like the pharmacists who are there as well.
OK, thank you so much, commentator and pharmacist Thorin Govind there.
I'm baffled by this. The British Medical Association is frankly wicked. Just the week before the general election, they went on strike, junior doctors, knowing there was absolutely no prospect whatsoever that the outgoing government, we all knew they were going to lose, were going to say, fine, we've not paid them extra money, we've not given them the 30% pay, so we'll do it now. So what they did for that week was cause chaos, more operations, more routine treatment cancelled. Wicked of them to do that, and overtly political, designed to embarrass the Tories. Now here we have this. This ballot has been going on with BMA and GP since June the 17th. Why didn't they wait to ballot members when we get a new government in and give the new government the chance? I said earlier, look, I wish this government the very best. I want them to get things sorted out. A lot needs sorting. And yet they could be going on industrial action as early as tomorrow.
What we're basically moving towards now is very much a country in which those who can afford private healthcare
So what's going to happen?
are being treated, and those who can't end up going to A&E for the slightest thing because they just can't see a GP. They need to. This government needs to do something pretty radical.
They do.
Right, up next, we're going to get some clarity on this £20 billion black hole in our finances and how we're going to pay for it. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Most people will be familiar with French artists such as Auguste Renoir, Claude Monet and Camille Pissarro, who with others made up the Impressionist movement of the late 19th century. But we are probably less familiar with the British contingent of the Impressionists, artists like Frank Bramley, Elizabeth Armstrong Forbes and Walter Langley, amongst many others. David Messam is on a mission to change that. I'm joined by David Messam and by Patrick Duffy, an esteemed archivist. These people we're talking about, are they really Impressionists? I mean, I assume they're British, but are they Impressionists?
I think we had the same query when we wrote a book about the whole thing in '85, actually. And we were the book nearly went out as The Garden of Bright Images, actually, though my author then, Laura Wortley, was quite insistent that it should be called The Garden of Bright Images, but I thought it'd probably be put in the gardening section, actually. So, you know, the question you ask is what is on other people's minds, too. Actually, have we got Impressionism in this country? I think for me, as I used to do quite a lot of shopping, if you like, in America, looking for English pictures out there, and they've got American Impressionism, and I'm quite happy with it, but the English are different.
Were they friends and colleagues? Were they collaborators with the French Impressionists?
Broadly speaking, British Impressionism is, as we term it, is the post-Impressionist movement. So they were certainly inspired by the French Impressionist movement as it was, but they came later. They travelled around Europe and became attuned to en plein air painting, so painting outdoors, and that's what they brought over with them. We call it British realism, but there's a focus.
British realism, I kind of recognise.
Yes.
I mean, that's exactly what that looks like.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
10:49, Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Now, Chancellor Rachel Reeves is set to accuse Rishi Sunak's government of a cover-up over the dire state of public finances.
Are the Tories really to blame for the whopping £20 billion black hole? Well, they clearly are, but should Labour have known about it already? Let's talk to the Director for the Institute of Fiscal Studies, Paul Johnson. Paul Johnson, you are seen as the seer, the wise man, if you like, the man with you've got no skin in this fight. I clearly remember you saying before the election, I think this was back in March, government and opposition are joining in a conspiracy of silence in not acknowledging the scale of the choices and trade-offs that will face us after the election. I think she doth protest too much, doesn't she, the Chancellor? She pretty much knew it was going to be a £20 billion black hole.
To a large extent, yes. From my understanding, though, is that I think there is actually some additional problems here from those that we identified beforehand, because what we were talking about particularly were the challenges after this year. I think what Rachel Reeves is going to be referring to are the challenges from this year. Now, some of those were certainly predictable and indeed predicted. So the higher public sector pay awards, for example, it was only ever funded for 1 or 2% increases. That was never plausible what was going to happen. So we knew that that was going to be a challenge. There seem to be some other challenges around the cost of asylum seekers, which have not been properly funded. So I think it's fair for Rachel Reeves to say the problem is bigger than she expected, but I don't think it's fair to say that she didn't expect a pretty big problem.
And they made it pretty clear that there will be no additional taxes on what they call working people. If they put capital gains tax up, Paul, in October, November, to cover this so-called black hole, does that count as working people?
Well, I think that depends on your definition, but clearly some working people pay capital gains tax. But after they made that announcement in their manifesto, you did see a number of Labour ministers coming out explaining that by working people, they meant people on relatively low earnings rather than higher earning working people. I can't think of a tax, any tax, which is not in some way paid by working people. So I think we have to take that with something of a pinch of salt.
Paul, your statement that you wrote before the election was not only insightful and incredibly knowledgeable, but it was written with a sort of beautiful, dry honesty, if you don't mind me saying that. And now that we've got through the election and you're seeing how things are unravelling, you're saying in that the choices in front of us are hard. High taxes, high debt, struggling public services, pressures from health, defence, welfare, ageing will not make them easier. That is not a reason to hide the choices or to duck them, quite the reverse. What do you see Rachel Reeves now being able to duck?
Well, I mean, she can't duck them. And I think part of the problem is that the last government did, in the end, duck a lot of these issues. I mean, the £20 billion cut in national insurance that we saw over the last couple of budgets was not manageable or affordable unless the then Chancellor had said how he was going to pay for it, which he didn't effectively do. Rachel Reeves is now going to have to, well, she's not going to do this today, but in the budget in the autumn, she's going to have to decide, is she going to accept higher borrowing than are currently forecast, or is she going to increase taxes? I can't see her reducing spending below its current level. So that's going to be a really tough choice, particularly given not only did the Labour manifesto said no higher taxes on working people, they ruled out a whole swathe of taxes on corporation tax, income tax, national insurance contributions, VAT, which doesn't leave an awful lot of choices about where you can find that additional revenue.
I talked to Labour campaigners, Labour MPs during the election campaign, Paul, and they were alarmed that they said she's unnecessarily boxing the next government in. We all knew they were going to form the next government. We knew they were going to pretty have a huge majority, and it's the biggest since 1997. Have you ever known a Chancellor going into number 11 who has boxed himself in quite so much?
Well, it's become an increasing trend in recent elections for both main parties to go into the election ruling out all sorts of tax increases, and it was clearly to some extent part of the tactics of the Conservatives, who ruled out even more tax increases, I think, as a way of prodding Labour into ruling out their own increases. So they are certainly very much boxed in by their own promises, but that's something they're going to have to make a political as much as an economic judgment about, as to whether those really will have to hold, or whether because the circumstances do look so bad, they're going to have to undo some of those pledges.
OK, thank you so much, Paul. That is the Paul Johnston, Director for the Institute of Fiscal Studies, a very wise man. I'd love to have him back on. We're going to go to the weather now. See you in a minute.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Plenty of sunshine across much of the UK, turning increasingly hot over the next couple of days, particularly across England and Wales. And you can see a cloudier start across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland first thing this morning. A weak weather front is producing some rain across the far northwest, largely the Western Isles, but also fringing western coasts into the afternoon. But plenty of sunshine for the vast majority of the UK, perhaps an isolated shower across northern England, southern Scotland, but temperatures rising in that sunshine, 25 to 29 Celsius towards the southeast, low 20s further north and west. Through this evening time, this weather front does just push a little further eastwards, bringing some patchy light rain largely to the Highlands and Islands. Further east, still sunshine holding on there across eastern Scotland. Cloud also encroaching much of Northern Ireland, some patchy rain across the west, slowly spreading eastwards. England and Wales, though, a fine end to Monday. Plenty of sunshine, temperatures still holding up the mid to high 20s, so great for an evening walk. And then overnight, this weather front just slowly pushes its way southeastwards, loses most of its so just becomes an area of cloud. Some patchy light rain and drizzle perhaps over the highest ground. Most places dry overnight, prolonged clear spells, but this will still mean temperatures holding up generally in the mid to low double figures. So a warm start to Tuesday, plenty of sunshine across England and Wales. The remnants of this weather front perhaps just giving a little more cloud across parts of northern England later, parts of Wales. Northern Ireland also clouding over through Tuesday, perhaps 1-2 splashes of rain possible. Scotland also bright and sunny. In the sunshine, temperatures rising for many of us, again approaching the high 20s, close to 30 Celsius in the southeast.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Morning, 11 a.m. on Monday, the 29th of July, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So do we have some tax rises incoming? I hope not. The Chancellor is due to reveal this huge £20 billion black hole in public finances this afternoon, claiming she didn't know anything about it before now.
And GPs are threatening industrial action. Family doctors, well, we'll get the result of the vote after midday today. It could be the first industrial action by them for 60 years.
And our favourite people, they're at it again. Just Stop Oil activists have been blocking departure gates at Gatwick Airport this morning. I would quite like to walk over them. I might accidentally drop my water on them.
Wouldn't that be terrible if you had a hot cup of tea?
Will they ever stop this?
No. And we're delighted. The Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, is coming in. We're talking to him because he's backing the police officer at the centre of the Manchester Airport bust-up. You may have seen new footage which reveals the true nature of the attack which triggered the police officer's response. Richard Tice gives us his take in just a moment.
So interesting, that police footage.
Really
How we
is.
got to see the bit of the police officer kicking the perpetrator in the head. And then it was only a few days later that we got to see the actual action that led to that violence.
And it seems there were a series of events that led to, which were the trigger. And people have got very strong views on this in the area of Greater Manchester. Rather sat on the fence, Andy Burnham, I thought, by saying on the one hand, on the other hand, but he said it was a very serious issue.
He has to. Reinstate that police officer, is what I say. I mean, I know it's controversial. In my opinion, he did lose his cool, no doubt about it, but I'm not surprised. It was a very highly charged, violent altercation.
He watched him deck two women police officers.
Absolutely.
One of whom sustained a broken nose.
Of course you did. Let us know your thoughts this morning. gbnews.com/yoursay. First, though, here's Sam with the news.
Bev, Andrew, thank you very much, and good morning to you. It is 2 minutes past 11. Leading the news today, spending cuts are expected to be announced later by the government in an effort to plug a £20 billion black hole in public finances. Rachel Reeves will scrap some road and rail projects and cut public sector waste, among other measures, to rein in spending. She'll also accuse the Conservatives of covering up the true scale of Britain's economic difficulties when she addresses Parliament later. But the Tories say she's trying to con the British public so that she can raise taxes. No tax rises are expected to be announced today, but it is understood the Chancellor will ask for the OBR to carry out a full assessment of the public purse. Those hoping to lead the Conservative Party have until this afternoon to throw their hat into the ring. Former Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch became the 6th Tory to join the race, promising to refocus the party on Britain's sovereignty and to revive confidence in capitalism. And that comes after Suella Braverman's ruled herself out of the race, saying there's little point in her standing because the party's branded her, in her words, mad, bad and dangerous. Her predecessor in the Home Office, Priti Patel, is also standing, and she's got the backing of Devon and Cornwall's Police and Crime Commissioner, Alison Hernandez.
You take Priti anywhere, people want to talk to her, they recognise her. She stands for something I think people believe in, which is that unity element. She is someone who is a no-nonsense but absolute compassionate Conservative. And I think for me, we are supposed to be the party of law and order, and someone who's got a real understanding of law and order should be someone who takes us to the next stage.
One of the UK's top GPs is warning that planned strikes would bring the NHS to a standstill. The British Medical Association's ballot of its members closes later. Dr Katie Bramall-Stainer says it could see GPs stop doing some kinds of work that sits outside of their contract, which would have severe consequences on the health service. The government, though, insists contingencies are being planned for every eventuality to keep patients safe. Just Stop Oil protesters have this morning used suitcases with lock-on devices to block departure gates at Gatwick Airport. The activists, 8 of them so far, were arrested a short time ago after entering the South Terminal and sitting in front of the security scanners. The group says it's taking what it calls the proportionate action necessary as part of its summer disruption plans to generate the political pressure it says is needed to stop the use of fossil fuels. Well, Gatwick says the terminals remain open and are operating normally. Global leaders are urging Israel not to escalate tensions with Lebanon after a rocket strike killed 12 children on a football field in Golan Heights. Israel and the US have blamed Hezbollah for the deaths, claiming the weapon was launched from a part of the region that the militant group control. The Iranian-backed group, though, has denied it was responsible. Meanwhile, Lebanon's foreign minister has condemned the strike but says it shouldn't give Israel a licence to kill. Here, the High Court is set to rule on the legality of the previous government's emergency ban on puberty blockers. The advocacy group Transactual and a young claimant challenged the order restricting the prescription of the medication, which suppresses the natural production of sex hormones to delay puberty. The ban was put in place by the now Shadow Health Secretary Victoria Adkins. Her Labour successor, Wes Streeting, said he was treading cautiously amid lots of fear and anxiety on both sides of the political spectrum. The Department of Health defends the ban, though, and is calling for the case to be dismissed. And in France, the first arrest has now been made following a series of attacks on the rail network. Local trains and Eurostar services were disrupted all weekend after signal boxes were set on fire. In what's described as coordinated sabotage, there was speculation that Russia was responsible. However, in the last few minutes, the Kremlin have said that was fake news. But there's been an unexpected silver lining for visitors to Paris after last week's travel chaos, with tickets for the games now easier to get and hotel prices dropping amid the disruption. Travel correspondent Simon Calder from The Independent shared this morning with us that his experience in Paris for the opening ceremony was far from what he'd expected.
It was great, but the hotel I stayed in, which was about half the price of what you normally expect to pay in the summer, they just said Paris is dead. We thought we were going to get extremely rich on this. In fact, we're losing lots of money and it's a disaster. And that's borne out with lots and lots of people, whether they're driving taxis or running bars and restaurants. So great time to be a tourist, terrible time to be working in the tourism industry there.
Sounds like now is the time to head over to France. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, off to look for some hotel deals. See you soon.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. That breaking news, Tom Daley, Great Britain's diver, along with Noah Williams, they've won silver medal in the men's synchronised 10-metre platform at the Paris Olympics.
Pretty amazing, isn't it? Because he's almost a veteran now. We remember him when he was a 12-year-old or 13-year-old going for gold.
Honestly, I know, look, I want you to watch GB News, don't turn over. Watch it another time or something when you're on the bus, watch it on your phone. But look, I think the sport at the Olympics is so inspirational, and I know that word gets used a lot, but I think for kids it genuinely is. I was watching yesterday at my mum's house with my 12-year-old and with the other little nieces, and they watched the gymnastics. Now, a couple of them do a bit of sort of amateur gymnastics, and so then they went out into the garden and they created a gymnastics arena all of their own.
They want to be Simone Biles.
They want to be Simone. Well, yeah, maybe not, but they want to be Simone Biles. They want to be, you know, and oh look, there they are. If you can see the picture, that's my mum's garden. And the kids, and they set up a little judges' table, and they put a piece of 4x2 as a beam, so they were walking along the beam, and they wouldn't have done that if they hadn't been watching sport on TV. So
who was the judge?
More of that.
Was that you?
No.
That was objective, then?
That was one of the cousins there. So if your kids are at home and they're enjoying the Olympics as well, do send us your pictures of them out in the garden.
Now, change of tone. The Manchester airport attack last week, it's causing huge comment, isn't it? There were protesters taking to the streets of Rochdale and Manchester city centre over the weekend.
That's right. This video, of course, has been watched millions of times now. It shows police officers were attacked before they retaliated by kicking and stomping on one of the brothers.
Since then, the brothers' family has expressed their concern for the officers, with their lawyer apparently also rolling back on claims they were deliberately targeted.
So joining us now is Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice.
And MP.
Thank you very much. Thank you, yes. Yeah, haven't quite got used to that.
Remind me the name of your constituency.
Don't be so rude. Boston and Skegness. Well, and I tell you what, people have heard more about Boston and Skegness in the last 3 weeks than they have in the previous 9 years.
I saw the vanquished Tory at a reception a few weeks ago, and I said, history, mate. history. That's the biggest Tory majority to ever go down.
Ever overturned, that's right.
Enjoying it?
I'm actually, yes, I'm loving it. Getting to grips with all the sort of the procedures.
Erskine May was a big part of your life.
Really?
That is the parliamentary procedure book.
Erskine who?
I'm not being rude. I'm not being rude. That is a book of parliamentary procedures.
I've just got to find my way around at the moment because, I mean, it's an absolute warren. But no, we're getting stuck in. Did my maiden speech last week.
Were you nervous?
And... yeah, it's good to be nervous, actually. It's good to be nervous, but I did it without notes, and I told it the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's some great things going on, but also there's some serious challenges in Boston itself. And actually, constituents appreciate someone just telling it as it is and what needs to do. So, yeah, we're getting stuck in. We're fully on, and...
So you sit here now as an MP, Richard, to comment on this story from Manchester Airport. First of all, you know, we saw this footage and it looked like the police officer had gone too far.
It looked like he'd gone mad, didn't it? Really? You think, why would he
So
like that?
I was the first out the blocks. I saw the first video and I knew something very serious had gone on because I saw that 2 police officers had both drawn and used tasers. Now, the police do not use tasers very often at all.
Particularly in a crowded airport.
And I suspect most police officers have never used a taser and don't know the effects of it. So I knew something serious had gone on, which is why I said what I said at the time, which upset a few people, but I said, I tell you what, those police officers, something's gone on, and I felt that they were getting a very bad rap. And the truth is, in a high-secure, tense security area, which all airports are, don't take on an armed police officer. It's not going to end well. They've got serious split-second judgments to make, and in many other airports around the world, they would have shot first and asked questions afterwards, frankly. And I thought it was appalling that the Home Secretary, Andy Burnham, Paul Waugh, jumped to the defence
who's the local
MP, jumped to the defence of basically what turned out, as I suspected, the thugs, violent thugs, with no concern for the injuries to the officers, no concern about the female officer, and no suggestion that they were going to arrest people for assaulting a police officer, which is a very serious fine. No surprise to me over the weekend, the footage comes out and it shows that actually this was a vicious, violent, brutal attack by someone who clearly knows how to thump people very hard. He took on and floored at least 3 police officers.
2 of whom were women. And
the reality is, at that moment, bearing in mind, in other countries like America, a lot of police officers die because someone grabs their gun and then shoots them, OK? So they were literally fighting for their lives. And they responded as they did, using the tasers. And their job is also to protect other citizens in that airport and to make sure that an assailant is disabled. So now, actually, all of a sudden, all of these people, they're sort of rowing on the back foot. There's a lesson to be learned from this. And the key lesson is that the police have failed in their comms strategy. They should have got that video footage from the airport within a couple of hours and put it out there. And all of this nonsense would have stopped. The rioting, the protests, the fibs.
But are you saying a police officer can kick somebody in the faces on the ground and then stamp on him?
His or her job, right, is to protect lots of people in that airport. And it's a split... Hang on.
Tasered.
I'm not sure that he knew that. The guy that stamped on his head...
Also, most police officers have never used a taser, so they don't actually know the consequences of how disarming and disabling that is, because it's quite a serious thing. And I repeat, a split-second judgment. If he'd got it wrong, and that guy pressed an explosive button, right, as a suicide bomber, and blew up, and dozens of people died, and it turned out, well, he was a bit worried, you know, don't I make sure he's disabled? I tell you what, he'd have been criticised for that. Split-second judgments, these people need to be supported in making those decisions.
Lift his suspension? Would you lift his suspension?
Personally, I think they acted in self-defence. I think they acted in protecting other citizens, and I would lift his suspension. Yeah, of course, you can look back and learn some lessons. No one's saying there aren't lessons to be learned in all areas, but the key lesson to be learned is the police need to get on with the comms, get this CCTV footage, including the body cam footage from all those officers. That should either have been put out there for public consumption, or given to an independent panel to quickly make a public adjudication to say this is not all what it seems. And all of this rioting and upset would have been avoided. And look, it is serious when you've got different communities with anxieties about certain issues, making all sorts of allegations. All of that could have been avoided if the police had got this footage and put it out there literally within a couple of hours.
I also think as well, the conversation here should be around assaulting police officers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because in amongst all of this noise, we're forgetting that these were a couple of individuals who thought it was absolutely OK to take the hardest possible punch at police officers, including a woman.
And you can kill someone with a well-placed punch like that from someone who clearly knew what he was doing. You can kill someone.
The woman police officer's nose is broken.
Yeah,
and that could have...
And given the force, we may be lucky that it's nothing worse.
I wonder if he's in a... I mean, we don't know yet, but the way he was so violent, I thought, God, this bloke's used to this. Is he a boxer?
But actually, why was he so violent? What was he trying to hide? Right? Those are the questions that need to be asked. And as the police officers are going through their split second, they're under attack. They're trying to defend each other, and then they're thinking, "What's going on here? What's he about to do? Why is he being so aggressive?" All we were trying to do was have a word with him at a car park.
It's incredible.
Bear in mind as well, this is an airport.
I know.
Okay,
it's unbelievable.
This is an airport. There will be children around there. There'll be people coming off aeroplanes, young people.
Yeah.
It just is despicable that we're talking about the police officer doing something wrong.
Did you agree with Lee Anson, your colleague, who said that the copper deserves a medal?
Frankly, look, we don't know what that guy was going to do. But, Lee and I spoke a lot, and I fully agree with everything that he said. The police officer potentially prevented a much bigger issue. We just don't know. That will all come out. But I tell you what, I've had police officers speak to me over the weekend and appreciate the fact that it was only Reform UK that stood up for the police against a vicious, violent assault, and they're very grateful for that.
And the police have such a difficult job. Every day.
Every day.
And we always criticise the police. We never give them credit for... But that shows what they're up against.
But in the world of social media, that's why the lesson for the police to learn is they've got to be right out there, front of foot, with CCTV footage in order to prevent that negativity and that anxiety emerging. That's the reality.
Did you challenge the Home Secretary about this? Have you challenged him?
I wrote to the Home Secretary on Saturday morning...
At Cooper?
Asking for confirmation that she would support the violent thugs being arrested and charged, and that the course of law would be prevailed. That's been viewed my letter's been viewed almost 3 million times in 48 hours. And I think it has to be said.
Yeah.
And
people feel strongly, don't they, about
look, I understand, but
power.
I understand that people just looking at the original snapshot without thinking the consequences of the tasers, that was the giveaway. That was the telltale giveaway.
It was obvious to me that something had provoked that police officer.
It was obvious to me, and I called it out, and bluntly, that's why we've been sent to Parliament, to call stuff out
in hindsight,
and to say the unsayable. And
in hindsight, perhaps he didn't need to stamp on him, but he kicked him to keep him down.
You can't risk it. You have to make sure someone is disabled and cannot press a button for an explosive device.
Thank the Lord for the world. Sometimes, thank the God we're in this CCTV world, so we did see this, because otherwise we wouldn't know.
Correct.
Wouldn't be any the wiser.
Good to see you, MP Richard Tice.
MP Richard Tice.
Right, up next, we're going to have the latest on Tommy Robinson being arrested under anti-terror laws. Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Football and gambling can go hand in hand and cause long-term problems. New figures show that young adults aged between 16 and 24 who have bet over the last year are more likely to report mental health issues compared to those in older age groups.
And joining us now to discuss this is Matt Burgess, who is a former gambling addict and now helps those to deal with their own gambling issues.
Yeah, look, I think gambling is one of those things that is so accessible now. Everyone's got a kind of mobile phone in their pocket, walk around with a kind of 24-hour casino, if you like. So I think it's really important that people realise that we have to sort of recognise that is a month of quite condensed gambling, and we don't want people to sort of carry that on into their everyday life, because that's when it can become really risky and it could become addictive.
I had no idea, though, that it was linked to first-time gambling. For the first time, people might be able to pick up and have a go. And then it doesn't end there. It goes on, because by then you've got the bug. Is that how it works?
You've got to remember, for things like the Euros, the World Cup, so you get a lot more people watching football and therefore potentially betting on football.
May I ask you about how severe your own gambling addiction got?
Well, look, I think there was a couple of touch points for me where I realised that things were getting out of hand. There were some times at university where, I kind of thought, I'm definitely doing this a bit too much, but, kind of thought maybe it would move on once I left, but it didn't. It did follow me. And then, I got to points where I was at my worst gambling 16, 17 hours a day. I was spending huge amounts of money. It can spiral out of control very, very quickly, and that was the important thing that we want to highlight is, what can start as fun can become very, very dangerous in a sense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to some breaking news, really important news too, and please, they've got it right. The High Court has ruled the previous Tory government's ban on using emergency puberty blockers, we're talking about teenagers at the Tavistock Institute, was lawful. More on this throughout the day on GB News when we've got it.
Right, as we digest our 11 o'clock digestives, can you see, sorry, your courses then, we're joined by journalist and writer...
I bought them, by the way, as usual.
Not offered to us.
Regular viewers will know that at the 11 o'clock, 11:15 break, we like to have a cup of tea and start on a biscuit, don't we? Emma Wolfe is here, Matthew Laza is also here with us. Thank you both so much for joining us this morning. Right, Tory leadership contest...
Yeah, a bit of politics.
Go on, Matt.
So Suella Braverman has fallen at the first hurdle, or she would say that she's withdrawn at the first hurdle. She said she had the numbers to get on the ballot paper, but...
Oh, did she?
Exactly. Quite.
Oh, did she?
Exactly. Scepticism, I think, is appropriate.
Remember, there's 121 MPs. You need 10 to get on the list, and she says she's got the numbers, but there's no point going forward because nobody agrees with her prognosis what's wrong with the Tory party. She hasn't got the numbers.
Exactly. I mean, and she said that she's mad, bad. She's been dubbed mad, bad and dangerous, and that's why the Tories don't want to listen. She says the party does not want to hear these things said out loud. I think some of the party would say they don't want a candidate who said the party was going to lose before it had even lost in those last few days. When she sort of 2 days before the general election, she turned her fire on her own party, which has certainly not helped her cause.
When she says people don't want to listen, I'm afraid I don't think people want to listen to the Conservative Party, period, at the moment.
At all.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
This
Do you agree
is the
with
problem.
that?
Well, we've got
lost very
basically...
badly. They deserved to lose badly. They were useless. And people want to give this new government the best wishes and get on with it as best they can. I suspect it won't work very well.
And yeah, we need some robust opposition right now. We really, really do.
Well, of course, Reform will say it's them.
Well, and let's see whether Suella makes her way over to Reform. I think, actually...
I suspect she won't, actually.
No, you think not?
I just think she's been a Tory, and I'd be surprised, but you never know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think probably not, but you never know. I mean, it just depends. It depends really how she's treated by the new leader.
She'd also think if the new leader doesn't work, IDF's lasted 2 years,
I think
somebody else stepped in, they might come to her.
Yeah, and it's pretty clear that this leader, they've got a poison chalice, but they probably won't be the one in 5 years' time. You need someone to steady the ship. You need someone to be a leader.
Yeah.
Rishi Sunak certainly doesn't want to carry on. But it's pretty damning what she says, talking about a traumatised party. I mean, she doesn't pull her punches. But you have to remember, a lot of people do agree with a lot of the things that she's said. You know, especially on immigration.
They failed miserably on immigration.
They have failed miserably. And when she has
100%
spoken out, People don't want to hear it, but a lot of the country agree with her.
It must be a very lonely place for Suella Braverman to be in that.
Yeah, I think so.
And feel like you are swimming completely against the tide of the rest of the party.
And it would be interesting to see if she backs one of those who does make it onto the ballot paper, if she throws her support.
It's an uninspiring choice at the moment, apart from Kemi Badenoch, who I don't think is going to be elected as leader.
Well,
it's a pretty dull choice.
She's launched her campaign today. But I think her sort of number one message, her top-line message is that capitalism isn't a dirty word, which is a slightly peculiar... It's a very, very sort of internal Tory philosophical debate to have. It's not sort of... I don't think that speaks to the country as an offer. She's very much talking to the party. The danger, as my lot know only too well after the 2015 experience, is if you just talk to yourselves, you don't necessarily end up with...
But we know what Kemi stands for. It's bigger than that. It's about standing up to woke and, you know, getting back to basics and proper
and sorting out immigration, hopefully.
Yes, I think we know what she stands for, but I don't...
This lot won't sort it out.
No, they won't.
Immigration, they won't.
Well, I mean...
They're going to let more and more people in.
Not true, Ed.
More and more people will be let in. There'll be it won't be an amnesty. You'll dress it up as something else, but there'll be amnesties for people here.
We're going to process the applications.
Yeah.
We're going to take action against the gang, pop returns agreements. Just last weekend, rather than the plane that was being paid for by British taxpayers, sitting waiting for the Rwanda scheme that never happened, instead 50-odd people who were, because you were talking earlier about foreign criminals in our jails, so a mixture of foreign criminals and people who'd abused the asylum system were sent back to Vietnam which the Tories hadn't done. We're going to have a returns agreement with Vietnam.
They had been sending them back to Vietnam.
Robert Jenrick would say that he would tackle immigration.
Yeah, he was the one who resigned from the government over the immigration issue. I think it's... I mean, people say it wasn't the big issue at the election. It was cost of living, of course it was, but I'd say immigration was 2 or 3.
Immigration was absolutely... with the economy, I think it was absolutely the number one issue, and it was the one issue that neither party, well, both parties, have completely failed on. And most were refusing to address.
Immigration is, but you also got to remember that the Tories not only face a challenge from reform to their right, they face a challenge from the Lib Dems to their left. Ed Davey gave his first interview yesterday saying that he still thinks there are more Tory seats to be mopped up. And if we remember, after 4 years of the Blair government, the Lib Dems did gain seats in 2001. So the Tories have got a difficult challenge to keep the kind of Gales Bakery vote happy, the posh bakery seats, which will have a Gales Bakery.
Till all these huge whacking housing developments go up in these former Tory seats now managed by the Lib Dems, and the Lib Dems will whinge and wail about it locally, but they'll go ahead with it nationally.
And do you think that will cost them the seats locally?
I do.
What about, could you just mention us also Priti Patel, potentially as the leader of the Conservatives? Doesn't always come across brilliantly, but actually, in real life, lovely.
In real life, she is. Exactly what I was going to say. But when I see her speaking, she's one of those people, like Liz Truss, that I thought very early on, she's not bright. She's not bright in the way that Kemi Badenoch, you know she's a really, really intelligent woman. I have heard Priti Patel doing that 10-minute thing where she has said absolutely nothing. And, Bev, she failed massively on immigration.
Yeah, she would say she didn't have a cheat. She tried.
In real life, a very nice person.
Let's talk about, there was this huge celebration of patriotic Britishness in London on Saturday. The pictures were extraordinary. Hundreds of thousands of people in the sunshine, gospel singers. Tommy Robinson effectively was the leader of this event. He has been arrested now, Matthew, for detained by police under powers afforded to them under the Terrorism Act.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So it seems to be, it wasn't anything he did in terms of any incident at the march itself, apart from he showed a video at the march.
It's a documentary called Silence.
Yeah, which apparently the anti-terror police are interested in, but also apparently it's also there were some issues around libel in it allegedly. I mean, so this
would that normally get you arrested?
Well, that is what was just showing a video. Not normally you wouldn't have thought. Not on a I mean, nobody gets arrested for libel. No. So it'd be interesting to see whether these.
Because he was Tommy Robinson.
It's because it's another example of two-tier policing.
Yeah.
You've got this young 19-year-old who has not even been charged, and meanwhile, Tommy Robinson is arrested for being Tommy Robinson.
And showing a video.
journalists who were covering the event, they were sending along the crime reporters. They weren't sending along journalists. They were sending along crime reporters because it's a Tommy Robinson inspired demonstration.
But why would you arrest him? And he shows a video which may be defamatory, but as you point out, the law of defamation is nothing to do with the criminal courts. It's a civil matter. So why arrest him for showing a video?
I think one danger is, of course, that you make him a martyr. That for his supporters,
well, they are.
But he already is.
Yeah, he already is. And the more you kind of arrest him on terrorism powers,
he wants to be
moment
arrested.
of tension. Exactly.
Peter Tatchell, in the days before, he used to seek out being arrested, and he's now a public hero because of his very principled stance against some terrible regimes.
Yeah,
I mean that's what he wants.
Yeah, so I think it will be very interesting to see whether any charges come of this. But of course, because it's under the Terrorism Act, special rules apply in terms of the detention you can do with it. You can hold people for longer than you can under if you investigate.
So many things the police need.
He's not a terrorist.
But he's not. And there's no
many things. He's wrong. But he's not. I don't think.
But there is no suggestion that he did anything.
That he showed a film that he's not allowed to show because of this defamation.
And there are so many things.
But it's not a terrorist.
This video, the actual documentary itself, it is called Silenced, Britain's banned documentary, has now he's put that on his Twitter feed. It's now been watched 12.3 million times.
So
people want to see this.
Well done, the old Bill.
This sort of thing does backfire. And also, I mean, he is a controversial figure, of course he is.
Good.
However,
we need more of those.
When he saw his town of Luton changing, 10, 15 years ago, changing before his eyes with mass immigration in a very short period of time, I'm going to try and defend him now. He tried to articulate what he saw as losing a British culture. It was very controversial.
Yes, and this is exactly
and now the wheel is turning. And there are a lot of people now saying, hang on, I think he probably had a point.
He had a point, and this is exactly what Richard Tice has been saying about Boston and Skegness, and I've seen it myself in Boston. It's absolutely true, and local people feel unsafe. They don't just feel, things are changing here.
Yeah.
They feel unsafe. They feel unsafe for their children. They feel women feel unsafe, and old people feel unsafe.
And at the same time, we've now got 5 overtly sectarian MPs elected called independent Muslims.
And we have in this country running on Gaza.
Whether it's Tommy Robinson on one side, or whether it's the 5 MPs elected on an explicitly sectarian, clearly elected basically on exclusively on Muslim votes, pretty much exclusively on Muslim votes. I hate that. I hate sectarianism of any side, of any kind, and it's really depressing.
Well, it's about division, isn't it?
Yes, so much division.
I can't get a job. My employer's treating me bad. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm only into Gaza. I mean, they were elected on a ticket all to do with Gaza. It's just extraordinary.
This victory is for Gaza. Do you remember George Galloway saying that? Absolutely chilling.
Yeah.
Because, of course, these are issues that we need to talk about, but they are not.
Rather than blaming the immigrant across the street because your life is rubbish, we need to be looking up and realising who made the decisions to let people here that have given us cues at the GP surgery, have given us cues at hospitals, no places in schools, etc., etc.
In terms of these 5 MPs, what they need to be is they need to have the scrutiny on them that any other MP would have. And already we found that the one who it was revealed on this channel, the one who who beat Jonathan Ashworth, one of his key supporters, said some pretty unpleasant things. So the more scrutiny they get, the better.
There'll be plenty of that.
Yeah.
Matthew Larser, Emma Wolfe, we've run out of time. Always good, as always. Sam's waiting for us with the news. Here he is.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 11:30. The top story we've been covering today, spending cuts are expected to be announced by the government later in an effort to plug a £20 billion black hole in public finances. Rachel Reeves is set to scrap some road and rail projects and cut public sector waste, among other measures, to rein in spending. She'll also accuse the Conservatives of covering up the true scale of Britain's economic difficulties when she addresses Parliament later, which we will, of course, bring to you live here on GB News. But the Tories are saying that she's trying to con the British public so that she can raise taxes. We've heard in the last hour that the High Court has ruled that an emergency ban on puberty blockers by the previous government was lawful. The advocacy group Transactual and a young claimant had challenged the order restricting the prescription of the medication, which suppresses the natural production of sex hormones to delay puberty. The ban was put in place by the now Shadow Health Secretary Victoria Adkins. Her Labour successor Wes Streeting acknowledged what he called lots of fear and anxiety around the issue, though he is understood to plan to support that ban. Former Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch is the 6th MP to now join the Conservative leadership race. She's promising to refocus the party on Britain's sovereignty and to revive confidence in capitalism. It comes after Suella Braverman ruled herself out, saying there's little point in her standing because the party's branded her, in her words, mad, bad and dangerous. Her predecessor in the Home Office, Priti Patel, is also standing, along with Mel Stride, Tom Tugendhat, James Cleverly and Robert Jenrick. Tom Daley has won his 5th Olympic diving medal after securing a silver alongside his partner Noah Williams in the men's synchronised 10-metre final. The pair finished 2nd behind China, with Canada in 3rd place. It's the first ever silver for Daley to go along with his 3 bronze and 1 gold medal. For Williams, though, it's his first ever Olympic medal in his 2nd Games. And a yellow heat warning across the country is in place. Temperatures are expected to reach 30 degrees in the south east and in London in particular. The UK Health Security Agency says the hot weather may have significant impacts on the NHS and social care sector. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Still waiting for hopefully some more gold medals for us. I'll be back with the next update in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Talking of Toms, we've got the Harwood version in with us, and Emma Webb as well, because Emily's on a hold.
Emily is taking a well-deserved holiday, but we've got a treat because Emma is here all week.
What a joy.
Yay!
Very
excited for it.
It won't be the last. First of many.
If you can cope with him.
I mean, I am a nightmare. But, but you two have been away. How was it?
Lovely. We had a
Not
lovely
together,
time.
just in case you thought.
I saw...
Little chance of that.
I saw Mount Etna erupting in Sicily with the kids. That was exciting.
Great place.
You know, thinking had Andrew organised for this volcano to erupt on the day that I was there and I'd be killed in a lava stream.
Or at the very least trapped for a week.
But amazingly, your planes took off. Just Stop Oil didn't interrupt your travel plans.
Can you stand these
no
people?
far-left French groups disrupted any train that you might have taken.
No.
I mean, you've had a very smooth journey in a way that some people this summer
Well, you say that.
haven't.
You were delayed.
Stranded 90 minutes on the runway. They always do
90
it.
minutes.
Well, hang on, you get
Andrew,
on, you're all
how-
clipped up, you're all clipped in, you're all ready to go, and the pilot says, sorry, we're here for 90 minutes. Why don't they tell you that
Was
when
it
you're getting
Heathrow?
on? This was coming back.
I was also stranded for... I don't think anybody's plane takes off on time.
No,
you
not
just
really.
kind of assume that it's going to be late and everything's broken, nothing works.
And bizarrely, our largest airport in the country has just 2 runways, whereas Amsterdam Schiphol has 6.
Yeah.
But the Labour government
Charles
say...
de Gaulle has 4.
Labour say they're going to press ahead with the Heathrow Airport. How does that fit in with their environmental record?
Well,
They want to be the greenest...
China's creating a battery-powered plane. I was reading about this yesterday.
God, I'm not going on.
That could fly 1,000 miles. I mean, this stuff is happening.
You couldn't pay me enough.
No, I'm not going on
I
that.
actually had a really horrible experience recently on a Vueling flight. That,
What is a Vueling
had
flight?
The most terrible turbulence that I've ever experienced. People were screaming. I think we thought we were going to die. The plane just sort of dropped. We flew through a lightning storm and it was just absolutely awful. But what you do notice when you go to other countries is their airports are really nice.
Yes.
And ours are horrible.
And then you come back to Britain and all of our airports are just...
And then you go to Gatwick and Just Stop Oil and trying to disrupt people.
It's almost like we should do some investment. But funnily enough, the Chancellor... this afternoon,
Nice
I think
segue,
we should thank you.
We got there.
should mention at least something that's on the programme. The Chancellor will be delivering this statement where she's expected to cancel just about everything that was planned. These beaching, reversing, the new rail lines, the new roads,
Stonehenge Tunnel,
all of these things.
And they'll all be in Tory seats.
They'll all be in Tory seats. But what's more, the Tories say this is all just rolling the pitch, laying the groundwork for October budget tax rises.
And of course, we're also going to be talking about the Conservative nominations, which close today.
Yawn.
30.
Yawn.
OK. Emma and
Yawn.
From midday. Next, though, if you're struggling to see your family doctor this week, they may bring the NHS to a standstill with unprecedented industrial action. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. For many, it is going to be pretty sunny and pretty hot, but not for all of us, because there is a front just to the northwest of the UK, and this is gradually making its way in. So there will be a bit more cloud pushing in across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, perhaps the far north of England too. And there will also be a little bit of rain around. Nothing particularly heavy, but towards the Outer Hebrides, some persistent rain pushing in, and that feeding in across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland later as well. Across much of England and Wales, though, plenty of blue skies, lots of sunshine, and with that feeling pretty hot. Temperatures in the high 20s, possibly scraping into the low 30s. Now, as we go through this evening, whilst in the south it's staying mostly fine, it is still going to be a little bit cloudy at times across parts of Scotland, particularly across western areas, and here we are going to have some damp weather to end the day as well. Some clearer breaks towards more eastern parts of Scotland, but across much of Northern Ireland, a largely cloudy picture, a bit of rain pushing its way in, and across northern parts of England too, some cloud coming and going. But across more central southern parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a fine end to the day. Lots of late sunshine to look forward to. Overnight, we are going to see the rain in the northwest gradually edging a bit further south and east across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it breaks up as it goes, so many places turning pretty dry, and elsewhere across other areas it is going to be a largely dry night with some clear skies, perhaps the odd pocket of mist and fog, a touch cooler than last night across the northwest, but in the south it is going to be a bit warmer for some of us. As we go through tomorrow itself then, a fine day for many. Yes, still some cloud across northern parts, but less cloud than today, and it is looking mostly dry here, just 1 or 2 showers to watch out for. Meanwhile, across England and Wales, again, plenty of sunshine, and temperatures are going to be even higher, getting to highs of around 32. Bye-bye.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is. I'm told. I can't find the clock.
11:40.
It's 11:40. Where's the clock?
He's only been away for 2 weeks.
What, there?
There's a little clock there in the corner.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's 11:41. There we are. I'm Andrew Pearce. This is Bev Turner. So there we are. So look, a new report has revealed NHS funding of IVF has reached its lowest level since 2008, and access has become a postcode lottery.
So the North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper sat down with one former patient to hear her story.
I just know I'm made to be a mum. So to me, it's happening. It is. I am going to be a mum one day.
So 4 of them pre-filled syringes.
Last year, Katie West began her first round of NHS-funded IVF.
Where are you putting it?
Despite the injections, the hospital appointments, the nervous waits, Katie remained positive.
They rang me on the Monday morning, and it was a lady from the lab, and she said, "I'm so pleased to tell you." And as soon as she said that, I just screamed down the phone. I was like, "Oh my God, my little miracle embryo!" It's like it's going to work. It's happening. This here is a tube where they just shot it out, and I got to watch that on the screen. It was magical, and honest to God, that was the best day ever.
However, a week later, Katie began to bleed, and she knew that something was seriously wrong.
I just had a gut feeling. Because during the week I was waiting, I felt like I could feel it implanting. I had all these little signs and symptoms, but then when the bleeding started, I felt like I just knew that it was over.
Devastated, Katie knew her one chance with NHS funding was over. Because of where she lives, if she ever wanted to try IVF again, she would have to pay. A new report has found that in 2022, the NHS funded just 27% of all IVF cycles in the UK. That's the lowest level since 2008. And what it means is that for almost 3/4 of patients attempting to conceive that way, they're forced to face the financial burden alone. The report also found a staggering difference in how a person's location can affect their chances at funding. For Katie, she was told she would only have one chance. Yet just a few miles down the road, other women she knew were being given 2 or 3 opportunities for their IVF treatments to work.
I think it's amazing we have NHS, and we do get funding, but I just think one try isn't enough. It's not giving you half as much chance, even to get your body and mentally prepared for it. I just think, I think 3 tries we should definitely be all entitled to.
Commenting on the so-called postcode lottery of IVF funding, the Department of Health and Social Care told GB News, everyone should have access to the fertility services they need, regardless of where they live. There is clear clinician guidelines making sure there is equal access across the country, and we fully expect these to be followed.
So I'm now home from my egg retrieval.
Yet, despite these guidelines, for many women like Katie, their first chance at IVF was their only chance at IVF. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Thank you, Sophie. Such an emotional topic, that, isn't
Really
it? And
is.
it raises the issue of what we should be providing on the NHS, all these difficult decisions that will need to be made.
Yeah, and these are big issues for the new government, because if you're waiting for that cancer op or that cancer treatment or your hip replacement, you may be less sympathetic to someone who hasn't been able to get in for their IVF treatment.
It's really sad. Right, up next, if you're struggling to see your family doctor, things may well get worse very soon. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
No one wants their child to be a fussy eater. But what is the secret to expanding your child's culinary horizons?
Is there a way to get kids away from the kids' menu, the fish fingers, the chips? Joining us now is the UK's top-selling author of children's cookery books, Annabelle Carmel. Good morning, Annabelle.
Thank you, so lovely to be here.
So, first of all, what's the issue with kids just having the traditional easy meals like fish fingers, chips, beans?
It really depends if they've got preservatives in them, if they're full of salt. So I like to make them myself, and it's really easy. So I make my own chicken glazed nuggets, and super easy to make using proper pieces of chicken. You can cook them in the air fryer now, which is absolutely brilliant, so you need to fry them. And I think that it's really important that children grow up loving good food, because they make their minds up by the age of 5 what they like and what they don't like, and it's quite difficult to change their minds after that. But it's good to know that fussy eating is genetic. It's not to do with your cooking.
Oh,
that's right. Not to say that you can't do something about it. So I've written many, many books, and I have an app with 1,000 recipes on it, and a lot of how to make your own junk food, how to make your own isoles out of fresh fruit.
Yes.
How to make your own pizzas. I make the most amazing homemade pizza. I actually brought you some cookies here.
So these are your books here. So my first cookbook, that's for how old children?
That's from the age of 1.
OK, and you've got a weaning one at the end, the baby one?
Yes, that's my very first book. I lost my first child. It was really sad. She died at the age of 3 months. And my second child was the world's worst eater. And I wrote that book as my legacy to Natasha, never thinking that it would start a whole career.
Oh, bless you.
It sold millions of copies, and it's so popular.
Is it quite pivotal and important that you introduce kids to the weaning stage, or, how important?
It's very important, because the processed weaning food in pouches or jars, it's heated, so a lot of the vitamins aren't there anymore, so making your own is so easy and much cheaper.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It is 11:48.
So family doctors have been voting across England on whether to withdraw or take industrial action in 9 different ways over a row over their contract for GP services.
So this would be the first walkout in 60 years. If you can't get an appointment now, well, good luck. Let's get the thoughts of Dr. Lawrence Bookman, former chair of the BMA's GP committee. Good morning, Dr. Bookman. Thank you for joining us. What's your position on this? Are GPs left with no choice?
I think GPs are struggling very badly. They can't deliver the service that the patients quite reasonably want. They can't see everybody who needs to be seen. Some people who really do need to be seen are not having enough time spent with them. I think most patients would say they're not having enough time. No GPs are walking out. There's no strike. GPs can't strike. They're self-employed. Who are they going to strike against? And certainly not against patients. This is mainly about doing things properly for patients, which means taking more time with them. So, for example, if you want to refer a patient to hospital, refer them. Don't allow the NHS to filter out referrals that take time so that patients will actually get the referrals that they actually need, rather than the GP acting as a barrier on grounds of cost, because the NHS says, well, we can't afford a referral, so we're not going to let you refer. Or there's a filtering system, which are electronic referrals, where they're all processed through a central processing system that's designed to spread patients out. But actually what it does is act as a barrier to them. And it's time this sort of nonsense stopped. And the only way GPs can do it is to refer patients professionally, in other words, appropriately, rather than act as a barrier to patients getting what they want. You've just been talking about patients not able to get IVF because of the postcode they live in, and that's outrageous.
Yeah, but isn't it also outrageous, Dr. Buckman, that the BMA, as part of this proposal, if they do decide to take this form of industrial action, they could be limiting the number of appointments with patients, and you say this is all about patients, to 25 a day. Currently, the average is between 37 and 50. It's already almost impossible to get to see a GP already, Dr. Buckman. This is going to make it virtually... It's just not going to happen.
It's going to make it harder, I accept that. The fact is that GPs...
Well, how can that help the patient?
Well, by spending more time with the patients that you have. Seeing 36
you see, hang on, doctor, you see fewer than half of the people you were seeing, and you say that's going to help the patient because you spend more time with the patient you've got. So the other 25, that's 125 a week. Too bad.
No. The reason for seeing patients at a particular number is because that is the European recommended safe level. At the moment, we see patients at a rate that is way above the safe level. And actually, reducing it to what is professionally achievable, by the way, that's only one of the actions that GPs can choose to take if they wish. The reason for that is to get patients to get a proper service. If you're rushed in and out, you don't get sorted what you want sorted. All that happens is you're pushed onto another appointment, which takes up more time. It's actually better to spread out the patients. The reason why you're getting a service that, in my view, is below acceptable at the moment is because there are nowhere near enough doctors and nurses working in primary care.
So where have they gone? So you sort of led on to my question, which was going to be, what's the problem? Are there too many people who are ill, or are there too few doctors that have made this situation worse?
Too few doctors. We can't recruit. We can't get people. We can't persuade people. And it's not a bad salary, so we're not saying people aren't paid properly, but we can't recruit people to see patients. There are not too many patients. There are not enough doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers to deliver. Why are we not providing a better service? Because most of the doctors are exhausted and they're working at a level that isn't safe. All we're doing is, one of the 10 proposals is that GPs could consider reducing their workload to the same as the European safe level. That's all, not stopping seeing patients.
Well, Dr. Buckman, how many of them work at weekends? Dr. Buckman, how many GPs are working at weekends now?
Well, those who are on rotas to deliver a weekend service. But most GPs don't work on weekends. And the reason they do is because an awful lot of doctors can't actually do a full day's work because the workload is so high. And that's because there are not enough doctors. Making doctors work on weekends, which sounds completely reasonable, and I certainly used to work on weekends and didn't regard it as particularly worrisome. The fact is that the workload has risen and the number of people doing it has fallen.
OK,
you can't go on delivering to a larger population.
We'd love to talk to you about this another day. Dr. Lawrence Buckman, chair of the BMA's GP committee there. We have run out of time for this morning. It's been a first good show back. We are with you.
Good to be back with you. And we didn't even get to talk about dopey Joe Biden, who, if he's remembered, has pulled out of the presidential race.
We'll do that tomorrow. Here's Emily and Tom. Emma and Tom.
Could the BBC axe one of their most popular programmes? The scandal-ridden organisation will be publishing a damning new report during our airtime. We'll be there.
And just as the French trains have been sorted out at the Olympics, they've now had their fibre optic cables cut. And we'll be talking about how they're pointing the finger at ultra-far left movement.